Chapter 210. While the coroner was examining the body, Sui rushed over to the Yaman's main hall as soon as he heard the news. He rushed over as soon as he saw He Yen. He grabbed He Yen and looked at him from head to toe. Yen, are you okay? Are you hurt? Why are your clothes torn? Did they hurt you? He Yunxing stood at the side and said coldly, those who hurt her are all dead. Father, why are you so worried? Sui saw He Yunxing standing at the side with a nonchalant look on his face. He slapped him on the back and scolded, why did you ask your sister to bring you home for no reason? Don't you know that your sister is a girl? What if something happens to her? Is this how you protect your sister? The Yaman officer standing at the side, He Yen said, Father, I'm fine. Those people were not after Yunsheng. They were after me. Moreover, I can protect myself. Yunsheng, on the other hand, should be more careful when going to and from school. It's better for me to pick her up. He Yunsheng snorted. You should take care of yourself. He was still a little angry at Sui's biased actions, although he did not really care. At this time, someone came in from outside. It was Xiao Ju. He had rushed back directly from outside and looked travel-worn. As soon as he entered, he brought with him the chill of early winter. Xiao Ju walked in and asked He Yen, what happened? He Yen shrugged. I was picking up Yunsheng from school and encountered assassins on the way home. However, these assassins seemed to be suicide soldiers. I did not kill them. They all took poison and committed suicide. The coroner is examining the bodies now. I don't know what exactly happened. Suicide soldiers? Xiao Ju frowned slightly. The first thing he thought of was Su Jingfu's people. However, Su Jingfu's people would not be so stupid. If He Yen really died, this marriage would be annulled. Xiao Ju could also find another noble lady with a good family background. This way, their plans would all fail. Even if it was for their own interests, Su Jingfu would not kill He Yen at this time. Su Jingfu's people were the same. Were they He Yen's enemies? The Yaman officer wiped the sweat off his forehead. Marquis Wuan alone was difficult enough. Now, General Feng Yun personally came to inquire about this matter. If this matter was not investigated clearly, everyone's job would be lost. Are you injured? Xiao Ju asked again. He Yen opened his arms and turned in a circle to show him that he was unharmed. Don't worry. In any case, I am the number 1 Liangzhou guards. These people are not enough for me to fight. Xiao Ju saw that he was alive and kicking and felt slightly relieved. When Fei Nu received the news, he was with Lin Shuanghe to see the 2 dying brothers that day. When he received the news, he immediately rushed over. Shuajing could not be compared to the Liangzhou guards. If the Liangzhou guards could kill a person, it would be the harsh climate, the harsh environment, and the cruel and domineering Yudo. In Shuajing, there were countless ways to kill a person. He did not want He Yen to be involved in unrelated quarrels because of his relationship with him. However, this assassination attempt was extremely strange to begin with. Emperor Wen Xian had just bestowed the marriage and he acted as if he could not wait. This was not Su Jingfu's style at all. The coroner walked over while wiping his hands. He first saluted He Yen and Xiao Ju before saying, there were a total of 7 people who died. They hid wax pills in their mouths. The wax pills were sealed with a strong poison. They died upon entering the mouth. These people did not have any fatal wounds on their bodies. They took poison to commit suicide. Taking poison to commit suicide proved that their deaths had nothing to do with He Yen. He Yen was not the one who killed them. This also proved that these people came prepared. They were indeed death soldiers. Who are the other party? He Yunxing could not help but ask, why would they want my sister's life? Another Yaman officer stepped forward and said, we checked the bodies of these assassins. We found a banknote on one of the assassins. He handed the banknote to Xiao Ju. It is the banknote number of Jinyu Bank. This banknote was very clean. It was almost brand new and was well preserved. We plan to take this banknote to Jinyu Bank. As long as they checked the account books of Jinyu Bank these days, they would probably know who exchanged the banknote and made it appear on the assassin's body. However, He Yen frowned slightly. This was a bit too smooth. Since these death warriors could seal the wax pellets so well, it meant that they didn't care about life and death. How could they store a banknote so well in their bosoms? It was as if they were deliberately showing it to them. He Yen cupped his hands and said, "Sorry to trouble you." The Yamen officers repeatedly said that they did not dare. General Fengyan's father-in-law, Marquis Wu An's father. They did not dare to neglect him. He Yen raised his head and saw that Xiao Ju was still frowning, as if he was in an extremely bad mood. He tugged at his sleeve and said in a low voice, "Commander-in-Chief, I think we should go back first and wait for news. Let the Yamen officers solve the case. You and I have to pay attention these days." Since they could make a move on her, it might mean that Xiao Ju was also in danger. Xiao Ju looked down at her, thought for a moment, and said, "Since they came for you, you should stay at home for the next few days. Don't go out." "How can I do that?" He Yen flatly refused. "Yunsheng needs to go to school. I don't feel at ease with him alone. There's also my father. I'm afraid that those assassins will target them. The two of them are not as good as me. If they encounter those assassins, they won't be able to protect themselves." "Don't worry," Xiao Ju said, "I'll send someone to secretly follow and protect them." After a pause, he continued, "Xiao family too. I'll let Qi Wu follow you." He Yen shook his head quickly, "No need, no need. Qi Wu is not as good as me. He can't help much. I alone am enough. Besides, those people won't dare to be too presumptuous in broad daylight. They didn't succeed this time, so I don't think they will act rashly for the time being." After this, she still had to go to the Su family to gather information and find Mother Qin's whereabouts. It was really inconvenient for her to follow Qi Wu. It was tantamount to planting a spy around her. Moreover, it was the kind of spy who would turn around and tell Xiao Ju. If Xiao Ju knew about her strange behavior in private, He Yen wouldn't even know how to explain. But this time, Xiao Ju was unusually firm. "No, you can't be alone. If you don't want him to follow you, you can live with the Xiao family." He Yen. "Didn't you say that you want to protect my reputation?" Xiao Ju said coldly, "Compared to your reputation, I'm more worried about your safety." He Yen. He didn't know why, but he always felt that it was unnecessary for him and he swayed to appear here. He Yen thought for a moment and made a choice between the two options. In the end, he said, "All right, then let Qi Wu follow me." If she was in the Xiao family, she was afraid that she wouldn't even be able to leave the house. In the He family, although Qi Wu was there, she could just sneak out and get rid of Qi Wu. Although it would take a lot of effort, it wasn't completely impossible. Xiao Ju finally gave up. Because it was getting late and today's incident happened suddenly, after talking to the officials, Xiao Ju sent them back to the He family. She left Qi Wu and a few bodyguards behind before she left. After Xiao Ju left, He Yen washed up and went back to his room. Qing Mei cooked porridge, but no one was in the mood to eat today, so they went to bed early. Qi Wu and a few bodyguards were keeping watch at night, so He Yen didn't have to worry too much. After he got on the bed, he looked at the canopy and his heart was filled with thoughts. Actually, when those assassins committed suicide by swallowing medicine, He Yen already had a suspect in his heart after finding out that they were death warriors. He was afraid that the person behind the scenes was either He Rufei or Su Zhiheng. Her appearance at the celebration banquet must have scared Su Zhiheng out of his wits, and also made He Rufei suspicious. Perhaps they wanted to test her background, or perhaps they wanted to go all the way and kill her. Other than these two people, He Yen couldn't think of any other enemies. However, she didn't expect that these two people would be so bold and dare to make a move in broad daylight. Were they sure that she didn't know the whole story, so they were so bold? However, He Rufei and Su Zhiheng didn't know that she was He Yan and knew the whole truth. This move allowed her to figure out their background. She was afraid that He Rufei and Su Zhiheng weren't as calm as they seemed on the surface. Or perhaps, they didn't clean up their tails, so they couldn't wait to kill her to silence her. He Yan turned over and slowly closed his eyes. He Rufei was ruthless, and Su Zhiheng was cowardly. These two people didn't get along well with each other. They both had their own selfish motives and had something on each other. If they could quietly get rid of the other party, it might be a good thing for them. Relationships that were tied together because of benefits were fragile and unreliable to begin with. There was no difference between being a snipe and being a clam. The important thing was that the fisherman could sit back and reap the benefits of the fight between the two. She didn't know if it was because of her relationship with Marquis Wuan, or because of Xiao Ju, but the yamen acted very quickly. In less than 2 days, He Yan was notified to go to the yamen that the mastermind behind the assassination had been found. He Sui and He Yunxin weren't at home at this time, so He Yan went out by herself. Qi Wu followed her all the way to the yamen. When they arrived, they bumped into Xiao Ju, who was getting off the carriage and walking inside. "Governor, why are you here?" He Yan asked curiously. "They also informed you?" Xiao Ju nodded. He Yan didn't say anything else. She only thought that the people in the yamen were really lackeys. She was clearly the victim, but they went ahead of her and informed Xiao Ju. When they walked in, Official Lu, who was in charge of the case, invited them to sit down in the hall and ordered his subordinates to serve them tea. "Official Lu," He Yan went straight to the point, "have you found the mastermind behind the assassination?" The bailiffs went to Jinyu Bank and checked their account book. They found that the banknote was exchanged from the Fan family 5 days ago. Official Lu looked at He Yan and hesitated for a moment. He seemed to be very conflicted. In the end, he had to ask, "Does Miss He still remember the Fan family in the capital?" After saying this, he quickly glanced at He Yan. If he had a choice, he really didn't want to take this case. This case was a tricky one no matter how he looked at it. If he wasn't careful and didn't satisfy these two people, his official career might come to an end. Especially now that the mastermind behind the assassination had been found, he felt a headache. The relationship between the Fan family and He Yan was unclear. If he asked Xiao Ju this question in front of Xiao Ju, what if she felt uncomfortable and took it out on him? Fan family? He Yan was open and magnanimous. There wasn't the slightest bit of bashfulness. Fan Cheng. Official Lu sighed in his heart. She really was a heroine. No wonder she could subdue the cold-blooded and heartless Governor Jade-Faced. He smiled and said, "That's right. You're saying that the Fan family was the mastermind behind the assassination?" He Yan asked, "Why did they do this?" Official Lu said, "After we found out that the banknote was exchanged from the Fan family, we went to the Fan family. In Lady Fan's room, we found a poison that was exactly the same as the one in the assassin's wax pills. Lady Fan's personal maidservant told us the truth. She said, about 1.5 years ago, Lady Fan's only son, Fan Cheng, was killed on a boat on the Chunlai River. The assassin's whereabouts were unknown. At the time, Miss He was also on the boat, but no one knew where she went. Everyone thought that Miss He was killed by the assassin. Now that Miss He has returned to the capital safe and sound, Lady Fan believed that Miss He was the assassin and that Miss He was the one who killed Fan Cheng. Harboring a grudge, she secretly hired assassins in an attempt to take Miss He's life." "What did the assassin say?" The one who asked was Xiao Ju. Lady Fan refused to admit that she was the one who hired the assassin. She is now in prison and is still being interrogated. However, in this official's opinion, there are witnesses and evidence in this case. There shouldn't be any other possibility. Where is that maidservant right now? Official Lu sighed. After Lady Fan's maidservant told us the truth, Lady Fan started arguing with her. Before our men could pull them apart, that maidservant took a knife and stabbed herself in the heart, committing suicide. We don't know if she was afraid of the Fan family's revenge, or if she simply committed suicide to escape punishment. In other words, there is no one else who can prove Lady Fan's innocence. He Yan asked. Official Lu looked at He Yan. Miss He, this official knows that you have a good heart and don't want to wrongly accuse others. However, this matter is already a clear fact. In fact, in order to avoid arresting the wrong person, the magistrate's officers also investigated many things. For example, during the days when you went to enlist in the army, the Fan family continuously made things difficult for your father and brother. The reason why your father lost his position as a military officer was because the Fan family played some tricks. The Fan family has long blamed Fan Cheng's matter on you. Now that you have returned safe and sound, the Fan family doesn't dare to take revenge in the open, so they secretly take action. You don't have any enemies in Shuajing City. Other than the Fan family, there is no reason for them to take revenge on you. He deliberately ignored the possibility that He Yan was implicated because of Xiaoju. After all, he was just a small person and didn't dare to participate in the battle between Xiaoju and Prime Minister Su. He Yan looked at Xiaoju. Xiaoju said, I want to see someone. Official Lu was stunned. Military Governor Xiao, Fan Cheng's mother. Official Lu could still fulfill this request. When He Yan and Xiaoju arrived at the prison, they saw Lady Fan sitting in the innermost part of the prison. She was hugging her knees and curling up into a ball. Once someone approached her, she couldn't help but tremble and mumble something under her breath. He Yan frowned when he saw this and asked, Did you torture her? No, no. Official Lu was shocked and waved his hands. We didn't have time to interrogate her. We only arrested her yesterday afternoon. However, it is strange. When we came in yesterday, she was still fine. Her tone was extremely arrogant and she refused to admit that she was related to the assassins. This morning, when the jailer came to check on her, there was something wrong with her. However, Official Lu didn't think much of it. We have seen this kind of thing many times. Knowing that she can't escape with evidence, she began to act crazy, thinking that she can escape. He Yan squatted down and called out to her, Lady Fan, Lady Fan. When the woman in the prison heard this, she looked at him with fear. Her hair was very messy and covered her face. Only one of her eyes could be vaguely seen, and it was filled with fear. He Yan had seen Fan Cheng before, but this was the first time he had seen Lady Fan. He also knew from Qing Mei that Lady Fan wasn't a good-tempered person. Ever since Tang Ying and Fan Cheng's marriage was set, Fan Cheng and Lady He cut off all contact. When Lady He went to the door, the servants of the Fan family stood at the door, ignoring the curses of the people. He Yan was so ashamed that he fell seriously ill. However, now that he saw this woman, He Yan felt that there was still something suspicious about this matter. Even if a shrewish mother who spoiled her son really wanted to settle accounts with him, with Lady Fan's usual temperament, she definitely wouldn't do it secretly. Moreover, she was just a woman. How could she have come into contact with those men of sacrifice? Even if she really did hire assassins, why would she be stupid enough to put the poison in her room and not quickly destroy it? Why would her personal servant betray her master? Since she was afraid of being implicated, she simply didn't say anything. She even had the courage to die, so why would she commit suicide? Now that there was no evidence and Lady Fan was acting crazy, He Yan glanced at the woman in the prison. Was she really pretending to be crazy? Official Lu looked at He Yan's actions and his heart broke out in cold sweat. This Marquis Wuan really didn't avoid taboos. In front of her own fiancé, she dared to show such concern for her former lover's mother. Even if the other party wanted her life, she was magnanimous and didn't care. However, from Fan Cheng to Xiaoju, the He family's eldest daughter's foresight had indeed improved by leaps and bounds. He Yan stood up, let's talk outside. The few of them walked out of the prison. Miss He, Military Governor Xiao, this case, she's not the murderer. Without waiting for Official Lu to finish, Xiaoju interrupted him. Official Lu froze for a moment, but, the evidence is already complete. The so-called evidence is the evidence that the murderer wants you to see. If you continue to try the case like this, I'm afraid you'll fall into the murderer's trap. Xiao Zhu said. Official Lu's heart was incomparably bitter. He just wanted to be an official peacefully and quickly close this case. It wasn't easy to have witnesses and material evidence, so the case could be closed as soon as possible. However, Xiao Zhu refuted it with one sentence, so there was no end to it. However, he didn't dare to voice his complaints in front of Xiao Zhu. Official Lu thought for a moment, but if it's not Lady Fan, then who could it be? The clues are cut off here. The only thing on the assassin's body that can be used to identify her is that banknote. We can start from Fan family. Xiao Zhu calmly said, find out who the dead servant girl was in contact with before this. Find out who entered Fan Cheng's mother's room. Also, he paused, from tonight onwards, double the number of guards here. I think, very soon, someone will want to silence her. He Yan listened with trepidation. Xiao Zhu's analysis was similar to what he had in mind. No matter how much trouble official Lu thought it would be, Xiao Zhu still pointed out a way for him. After a series of assurances, he went to instruct the officials to do their work. He Yan and Xiao Zhu walked out side by side. For a moment, the two of them were silent. If He Yan had only guessed before that He Rufei and Su Zhiheng were the culprits, now he was almost certain. The Fan family's crime was too obvious. He Rufei and the others probably thought that He Yan previously had disagreements with the Fan family. Once something happened, they would definitely take advantage of the situation and accuse Lady Fan of the crime. They wouldn't investigate further. However, because of Xiao Zhu's words, official Lu was still investigating the case. In order to not make any mistakes, He Rufei and the others would take the risk to silence Lady Fan. Although this seemed to be full of loopholes, but it was their best method. What do you think? Xiao Zhu suddenly asked. He Yan came back to his senses and said, I think, what the commander-in-chief said just now was very right. I feel that there is something wrong with this case. She saw that Xiao Zhu was looking down and didn't say anything. Her heart moved and she deliberately teased, Commander-in-Chief, are you angry because of the Fan family? Previously, the one who had a dispute with Fan Cheng was the proper lady he, not her. When she had just arrived, she had forgotten about this. Now that she thought about it, Xiao Zhu was unusually silent. Could it be that she was unhappy because of this matter? This was also true. As a fiancé, to have a relationship with someone else, even in a normal family, was not acceptable. Slave Fei should have helped you investigate what happened on the spring-coming river back then. If I really had something, I wouldn't have done that, He Yan said softly. Xiao Zhu stopped and looked at her. The young girl's eyes were lively, like a child who had done something wrong. She was a little embarrassed, a little fawning, and a little smiling. It was impossible to tell that she had experienced a thrilling pursuit a few days ago. If it was in the past, he would probably follow He Yan's words and casually tease her, but today was different. He Yan, he called He Yan by her name, are you hiding something from me? He Yan paused and smiled as usual. She looked up at the person in front of her and said, no. Why do you say that, Commander-in-Chief? The young man stood in the same place and looked down at her. His tone was gentle, but his gaze was as sharp as a knife. He was silent for a moment before he asked, you really don't know where those assassins came from? For a moment, He Yan felt as if he had seen through everything and knew everything. However, after a moment, she said in confusion, Commander-in-Chief, what do you mean by that? If I knew where the assassins came from, I would have directly told official Lu and let him catch them. Why are we still wasting time here? He Yan's expression was relaxed, but her heart was beating very fast. She did not know if Xiao Zhu had found any clues. She could not tell Xiao Zhu these things. She also did not know how to explain these strange, crazy, and tragic and disgusting actions. She could not tell Xiao Zhu. Xiao Zhu looked at her steadily. After a while, she said lightly, it's fine. Chapter 211. In the next 2 days, He Yan waited for news from the Su family's Fu Wang. Unfortunately, he didn't know if it was because Su Zhiheng was also searching for Qin Momo's whereabouts, but Fu Wang's search didn't go smoothly. At the same time, on the night that He Yan and Xiao Ju met Lady Fan, there really was someone who snuck into the prison to silence them. Because of Xiao Ju's reminder, official Lu increased the number of guards in the prison. The assassin didn't succeed, but the jailers weren't able to catch the masked assassin. Even so, Lady Fan was still crazy. Official Lu didn't dare to lightly punish her. The Fan family and the servant girl who tried to commit suicide were still being investigated, so the case was at a standstill. He Yan was assassinated that day in the streets. After the city guards arrived, many citizens gathered their courage and came to watch. He Yan revealed his identity, so this matter couldn't be hidden. The next day, everyone in Shuajing knew that Xiao Ju's fiancé, Marquis Wuan, had been assassinated in broad daylight. Fortunately, her skills weren't bad and she managed to escape. For a time, the number of citizens in Shuajing who went out at night greatly decreased. They were afraid that they would encounter bandits wandering outside. Before everything was investigated, the people in Shuajing would only think that it was bandits. In the Crown Prince's residence, beautiful servant girls were playing the zither and dancing. The Crown Prince's indulgence in Guang Yan's sensual pleasures wasn't something that happened in a day or two. Although the Crown Princess was angry, she couldn't do anything. She focused all of her efforts on herself and hoped that she would give birth to a grandson soon so that the Crown Prince's position would be more stable. Unfortunately, the Crown Princess's stomach didn't live up to expectations. Ever since she entered the Crown Prince's residence, there had been no news. The Guang Yan was dissatisfied with the Crown Princess and became more and more impudent. Now, in the entire residence, there was no one who could discipline him. Today, the Crown Prince hosted a banquet and invited Prime Minister Su. Chu Zhao was also present. Ever since Imperial Father bestowed the marriage, I haven't had the chance to congratulate Zilan. The Crown Prince looked at Chu Zhao and smiled. This time, Zilan has fulfilled her wish and strengthened her marriage with Prime Minister Su. It is a wonderful thing. Congratulations. Finished speaking, he raised the wine cup in his hand to Chu Zhao. Chu Zhao hurriedly picked up the cup in front of him and repeatedly said that he didn't dare. Then, he drank the wine in the cup. Now that Xiao Huijin has returned to the capital, Guang Yan sighed. The emissary of the Wutua kingdom will enter the capital in a few days. Xiao Huijin would certainly do everything possible to obstruct the opening of the market in great way. But now that most of the people in the court are on our side, Ben Gong isn't worried. After a pause, a trace of ruthlessness flashed through the Crown Prince's eyes. Ben Gong is worried about Lao Si. If Xiao Huijin joins fourth brother. In the imperial court, although Guang Shui did not have as many connections as Guang Yan, and concubine Lan's family was not as powerful as Empress Shang's, they had a natural advantage that they did not have, Emperor Wenxian's favor. Emperor Wenxuan doted on Guang Shua, and several old and smelly pieces of hard shirtu in the imperial court also secretly supported the fourth prince's Guang Shua. The fourth prince is mediocre. You don't have to worry, Your Highness, Minister Su said with a smile. That kid is useless, but... The Crown Prince narrowed his eyes. He's always an eyesore. Most likely, although no one in the imperial court said it explicitly, everyone was well aware that his ability and character were not as good as Guang Shua's. Even his own people thought so. Even this old fox in front of him. The Crown Prince's gaze swept past Minister Su, and he thought of another interesting matter. Xilan, the Crown Prince suddenly looked at Chu Zhao. I heard that you have a servant girl who is beautiful and clever. Is that true? Chu Zhao heard this and felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over his head. Slowly, it turned to ice. However, he did not show it on his face. He respectfully replied, that is true. If you have such a beauty, why don't I see her by your side? The Crown Prince asked with a smile. However, there was no smile in his eyes. Why? Of course, it was because if the crown prince saw Ing Xiang by his side, it would be impossible for her to continue staying in the Chu family. For a long time, with the crown prince's Guang Yan personality, as long as there was a beautiful woman, he would kidnap her and bring her to his fu. Ing Xiang's appearance would only bring her trouble. This girl's hands and feet are not clever, and because she is too beautiful, it is not convenient to keep her by my side. This lowly official has always had her stay in the fu and do some rough work. Hearing this, the crown prince laughed loudly. Xylan, you are wasting God's gift. You don't know how to care for women. In the future, when you marry Ping Ting, you need to change. Otherwise, Minister Su will not be happy. Su Jingfu only sat to the side and drank tea with a smile. It was as if he did not hear the crown prince's words. Chu Xiao appeared to be at a loss. Since it is a waste to keep her in your fu, why not give her to me? The crown prince said nonchalantly, I lack such a clever servant girl. The Eastern Palace is not lacking in food to feed one more person. What do you think? Chu Xiao paused and raised his eyes to look at the Guang Yan. The zither music in the hall had stopped at some point, and the dancing servant girls had quietly retreated. In the silence, the air was stagnant like sticky blood, and there was a nauseating feeling of suffocation. The young man's face could be considered handsome, but it was unknown whether it was because of excessive indulgence, but there were obvious dark circles under his eyes. When he looked at people, there was always a trace of ruthlessness and mania. Even though there was a smile on his face, there was a trace of contempt in his eyes as he stared at Chu Xiao. That was disdain from the bottom of his heart. It was the contempt of a superior looking at an ant. What? The crown prince said jokingly, could it be that Xylan can't bear to part with her? Su Jingfu only looked at the teacup in front of him and did not say anything. Chu Xiao stood up and walked to the crown prince. He bowed down, how could Xylan dare? Ing Xiang was chosen by your highness to serve your highness, and it is Ing Xiang's fortune. It's just that this servant girl is clumsy and I'm afraid she will offend your highness. Since your highness has decided, when this official returns to the fu, I will immediately send Ing Xiang over. His respectful attitude clearly pleased the crown prince. The crown prince waited for Chu Xiao to kneel for a while before he stood up and helped him up. He smiled with satisfaction, there is no need to bow. You are someone close to me. After she is sent to the fu, I will take good care of her. Chu Xiao expressed his loyalty again, and after the crown prince was greatly pleased, he returned to his seat and sat down. There was good wine and delicious food on the long table. He held his chopsticks and drank with a normal expression. It seemed that he was not affected by this matter at all, but when he stopped drinking, his gaze fell on Su Jingfu beside him. The old man's face was kind and affectionate, and he seemed to be somewhat open-minded. He looked over with a smile, just like his master's gentle smile when he became his disciple. Chu Xiao also returned a smile to Su Jingfu and raised his cup to congratulate him. If one looked carefully, one could see that the fingertips of his other hand under the table were embedded in the palm of his hand, and there were traces of blood that were neither deep nor shallow. By the time they returned to the Chu family, it was already very late. Stepping into the fu, the smile on Chu Xiao's face disappeared completely. He was used to wearing a cultured and refined smile, even when facing the servants of the Chu family. Today, it was as if he could not bear it. As soon as he entered the fu, his face was so ugly that it seemed like water would drip from it. The servants did not even dare to approach him. Everyone in the Chu family knew that this fourth young master was extraordinary. When he was first sent back to the fu, everyone thought that this fourth young master would not live long. An outside wife, and a lowly child born of a brothel girl, would not be tolerated by Madame Chu. Before Chu Xiao met Su Jingfu, he also had a difficult time. Although he had Chu Linfeng's protection, Chu Linfeng was not a father who cared about his son. In a corner that Chu Linfeng could not see, Chu Xiao was often beaten up. However, this child was very good at enduring. He endured until good luck came. Prime Minister Su Jingfu picked him, and soon he became Prime Minister Su's favorite student. After that, Chu Xiao skyrocketed. Gradually, Madame Chu could no longer touch him. Chu Linfeng listened to his son's every word, but Chu Xiao's temperament did not change. He was very gentle to the servants of the Chu family, as always. After a long time, many of Madame Chu's servants also secretly sought refuge with Chu Xiao. Even a fool would know which master to choose from, who had a better future and was more gentle and considerate. But today, Chu Xiao's good manners and good temper seemed to have run out of patience. As soon as he walked into his courtyard, he saw the familiar lantern swaying at the door. Chu Xiao walked in, and Ying Xiang came forward to greet him. Fourth young master. He walked into the room without saying a word. Perhaps his expression was too strange today. Ying Xiang was startled and followed him in. Standing beside Chu Xiao, she asked softly, Fourth young master, did something happen? Chu Xiao looked up at the woman in front of him. Ying Xiang was very beautiful and charming. She was like a painting as she stood here. Her beauty was more beautiful than a flower. Her appearance was enough to enter the palace. In the Chu family, if it were not for the fact that it was inconvenient for him to do anything to her, Chu Linfeng would have already made Ying Xiang his 20th concubine. It was hard to imagine how Ying Xiang's parents, who looked so ordinary, could give birth to such a beautiful face like Ying Xiang. The first time Chu Xiao saw Ying Xiang, it was in front of the brothel. Ying Xiang's father, a gambler, was holding her wrist and bargaining with the brothel's madam to see if he could sell his daughter for a higher price. Ying Xiang's mother, a pregnant woman, just stood aside and cried silently. She did not dare to say anything. At that time, Chu Xiao was only 9 years old. He had just been with Su Jingfu, and Mrs. Chu did not dare to bully him openly. Ying Xiang looked to be the same age as him. Her clothes were very shabby, but her skin was very white. Although she did not dress up, he could see that she was a beauty. Her expression was very calm, and she did not cry or make a fuss. She just stood there. When Chu Xiao stopped across the street to look at her, the girl raised her head and looked at him. There was no expression on her face, but he seemed to be able to see her deep sadness and despair through her eyes. It was as if she had surrendered to her fate and was powerless to resist. In that moment, Chu Xiao thought of Yu Runmei. He ordered his servant to buy Ying Xiang for 2 silver coins and went back to tell Chu Linfeng that he was lacking a personal maid. Chu Linfeng thought that Chu Xiao had other thoughts. He was a romantic, so he was not angry at his son's behavior. Instead, he was very appreciative of it. From then on, Ying Xiang stayed by Chu Xiao's side. In these years, Ying Xiang did not talk much. What was different from her beautiful appearance was her quiet and obedient personality. She was also becoming more and more beautiful. Chu Xiao knew that beauty would bring disaster. The days that he could protect Ying Xiang were very limited. Ying Xiang probably noticed the pity in his eyes. Ying Xiang was stunned. After a while, she pursed her lips and asked, Fourth young master, does this have anything to do with me? I went to the Crown Prince's palace today, Chu Xiao said, the Crown Prince knows about you. The room was silent for a moment. After a while, Ying Xiang said calmly, I understand. Her answer was obedient and gentle, just like when she was about to be sold by her biological father outside the brothel. She naturally accepted her fate, as if she had expected it. Chu Xiao moved his lips and finally spat out 2 words, I'm sorry. Ying Xiang smiled. She walked to the table and poured tea for Chu Xiao as usual. The tea was simmering on the stove in advance. This way, when Chu Xiao came back, he would drink hot tea. On such a cold day, he needed to drink hot tea to warm his stomach. She handed the teacup to Chu Xiao and said softly, I've been with fourth young master for so long. I'm satisfied. In the future, when I'm not here, please take care of yourself. Chu Xiao took the tea and didn't say anything. Ying Xiang knelt down. For so many years, I'm indebted to young master for taking care of me. Ying Xiang has nothing to repay you with. Before I leave, I'll kowtow to young master. She lightly kowtowed 3 times to Chu Xiao. Each kowtow seemed to weigh more than 1,000 gold pieces. After the last kowtow, she bowed down for a long time and didn't get up. Chu Zhao didn't stop her. After a long time, Ying Xiang stood up again and bowed to Chu Zhao. Then, I'll go back to my room to pack. Take care, young master. After she finished speaking, she was about to leave. Ying Xiang. Chu Zhao called her name. Ying Xiang stopped in her tracks and turned around. A glimmer of hope suddenly appeared in her eyes. That hope was hidden, but in the night, it was brighter than the stars. Chu Zhao avoided her gaze, as if he couldn't bear to look at her. After a moment of silence, he spat out 2 words. Take care. He Yan didn't know about these matters in the Chu family. These days, all of her attention was focused on the Su family. Money makes the world go round. With the help of money, Fu Wang was able to find Nurse Qin's whereabouts a few days earlier than the 8 or 9 days he had previously said. When He Yan received the news and went to the tea house near the Su family, Fu Wang approached him with a smile on his face, as if he had done something worthy of pride and couldn't wait to be rewarded. When He Yan saw him like this, he knew that he must have made a big gain. He was also delighted and asked, Have you found her whereabouts? Young master. Fu Wang was very good with words. He didn't talk about the results of the matter, but only talked about the hardships and dangers he had faced in the past few days. Then he said, This little one has risked my life to do this for you. You can't help but feel sorry for me. He Yan smiled and put the last piece of silver in her sleeve on the table. At this point, she was also a pauper. However, in front of Fu Wang, she still had to put on an act. Little brother, if you do things for me, I will definitely give you benefits. This silver is only a small amount. If you can do more things for me in the future, the silver will never run out. When Fu Wang heard this, his eyes lit up. He had an idea. He was afraid that after completing this business, this mysterious person would disappear. Since the silver came so easily, he naturally wanted to do a long-term business. This person meant that there were other things for him to do. Fu Wang was happy. This little one has already helped young master find out Nurse Qin's whereabouts. Nurse Qin has a lover who previously lived in the Niu family village outside the city. However, this little one also found out that after Nurse Qin ran away to find this lover, they no longer lived in the Niu family village. This lover's surname is Niu and he is a blacksmith. Blacksmith Niu has a relative who lives in a barren mountain more than 10 li away from the Niu family village. That mountain is so big that it is not easy to find a person. However, they live in the mountain and need to exchange for food and cloth. On the 10th day of every month, Blacksmith Niu will go down the mountain to the nearby market to buy food. He also helps people do some work. On the day he goes to buy food, he will put the forged ironware in a blacksmith shop called Changmao Blacksmith Shop to sell. If young master wants to find Nurse Qin, you can first go to Changmao Blacksmith Shop. On the 10th day of the month, Blacksmith Niu will go down the mountain and find him. Only Blacksmith Niu knows where Nurse Qin is. Fu Wang smiled slyly. As for how to make Blacksmith Niu speak, that will depend on young master's plan. Is the information you said true? He Yan asked. It is absolutely true. How could this little one dare to deceive young master? Fu Wang hurriedly said, It's just that eldest master has ordered people to investigate Nurse Qin's whereabouts. This little one went through many channels to find this place. It is not impossible for eldest master to find it. If young master is in a hurry, it would be best for you to hurry to that blacksmith shop. If eldest master gets there first. He was not really thinking for the mysterious person in front of him out of kindness. He was just afraid that the mysterious person would not be able to find Nurse Qin and disappear. In the future, he would not be able to earn money so easily for him to spend. He Yan was also a little excited. She originally came to the Su family to look for evidence. She did not expect to find a living person. Now that Fu Wang had inquired so carefully, it was really a pleasant surprise. You have done well in this matter. Receiving praise, Fu Wang was overjoyed. It was as if he was looking at a steady stream of shiny silver flowing towards him. He said without thinking, "It is this little one's fortune to work for young master. If young master has anything else to say, please do not hesitate to tell me. This little one is not good at other things, but my legs are a little diligent. If I can help young master, that would be great." It would have been better if he did not say this. Once he said this, He Yen really thought of another matter. She hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you know if there has been anything wrong with the current Su family's young mistress recently?" Young mistress? Fu Wang was stunned. He felt that the person in front of him was more and more unfathomable. Previously, he said that concubine he was his former lover. Could it be that this Su family's young mistress also had some unclear relationship with him? If that was the case, wouldn't his eldest master's head be covered in green clouds? For a moment, Fu Wang sympathized with Su Zhiheng. He Yen did not know that the servant's mind had already wandered 100,000 miles. She only asked, "You don't know young Mistress Su's situation?" "This little one is only a gatekeeper," Fu Wang said with a smile. "Young mistress's courtyard is filled with servant girls and older women. There are very few servants. If young master really wants to inquire, this little one can also run errands, but..." "But what?" He Yen asked. That day, not long after he bumped into Madame He and He Xining at Yuhua Temple, she encountered an assassin. He Yen thought about it and felt that He Rufei was definitely involved. Although He Xining did not know anything, with He Rufei's cautiousness, he might not let her go. Although he did not spend much time with his younger sister, He Yen did not want anything to happen to her. However, young mistress seems to be tired these days and has not gone out much. When Madame went out, she did not take her with her. Fu Wang said. He Yan's heart tightened. Madame Su did not take He Xining with her when she went out. Originally, it was not a big deal, but after she went to Yuhua Temple, He Xining could not help but guess that He Xining was under house arrest by the Su family. Fu Wang, He Yen looked at the servant in front of him. "I want you to do one more thing for me. Keep an eye on young Mistress Su. If something happens to young Mistress Su, or if there are any problems, please go to the tea house and find the freckled waiter and inform him." Although Fu Wang was doubtful, he still nodded, "Okay." After the matter was settled, the two parted ways. He Yen left first, followed by Fu Wang. When Fu Wang left, he didn't notice that in front of a silk cloth shop on the opposite side of the street, there was a figure hiding behind a pillar in front of the shop. It was only after his figure disappeared that the figure came out. It was a woman in black. At night, the door to the Xiao family's study was opened and someone came in. Xiao Ju hung the sword back on the wall and took off his outer clothes. Just as he turned around, someone knocked on the door. "Come in." The person who came in was Luaning, dressed in black. Xiao Ju did not look at her and walked to the table. There was a stack of letters on the table. He picked up a few and flipped through them. Luaning said, "The matter that young master asked this subordinate to inquire about, there are already some clues." The young man was taking out a piece of paper. Hearing this, he did not raise his head and only said, "How is it?" Luaning was somewhat hesitant. Xiao Ju's hands paused and he glanced at her. It was this glance that made Luaning make up her mind. She said in a low voice, "This subordinate has been waiting at the Su family's door for 3 days. Today, Miss He came." The room was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Miss He and the Su family's doorman sat in a nearby tea house for an hour before leaving. This subordinate asked the tea house's waiter. Before this, they had already met several times. Xiao Ju threw the letter in his hand on the table and sat down on the chair. He looked at her and said, "What did you find?" The doorman is called Fu Wang. Recently, he has a lot of money in his hands and is looking for someone called Qin Mama in the Su family. Qin Mama was the wet nurse of He Wanru, Su Zhiheng's favorite concubine, but after He Wanru died of illness, Qin Mama disappeared. This subordinate guesses that Miss He gave Fu Wang a sum of money and asked Fu Wang to inquire about Qin Mama's whereabouts. But the strange thing is that the Su family's eldest son, Su Zhiheng, is also looking for Qin Mama everywhere. After Wanning finished speaking, she did not dare to look at Xiao Ju's expression. He Yan unexpectedly had an unclear relationship with the Su family. For Xiao Ju, this was definitely not good news. A woman with many secrets always made people suspicious. This person called Qin Mama seems to be very important. The young man played with the paperweight in his hand. Under the shadow of the oil lamp, his expression could not be seen clearly. Have you found Qin Mama's whereabouts? Wanning nodded, I have. Chapter 212. The winter in Shuajing was getting colder by the day. It rained at night and the next morning, the ground was covered in a layer of damp coldness. On the 10th day of the 10th month, He Yan got up early. He Sui and He Yunxing left before the sun rose. One of them had to go to work and the other had to go to school. He Yan got up after they left and lit a candle. He quietly finished washing up and tiptoed out the door. Qing Mei was sleeping soundly and it was not yet time to wake up to cook. He Yan knew that Qi Wu was staying in an empty room in the courtyard. He was keeping watch in the first half of the night and resting in the second half of the night. However, this person was very quick-witted and was afraid of being discovered. He Yan used the skills he learned from his previous life in the vanguard and walked the short distance from the courtyard to the outside. Xiang looked at her as if he did not understand her actions. He Yan rubbed the horse's head. He Yunxing really loved this horse and specially bought a saddle for it. However, he was reluctant to ride it and the saddle was new. However, she was going out of the city today and she was so poor that she did not have the money to rent a carriage. She could only ask Xiang to give her a ride. He Yan mounted the horse and galloped out of the city under the hazy light of the winter morning. When the rooster crowed for the third time, Qing Mei yawned and got up to boil water. The water stove was placed outside the courtyard and the kettle gurgled with steam. It gave off a bit of warmth in the cold morning. She first went to the kitchen and boiled the porridge. Then she went to the courtyard to add water to the stable's water trough. He Yunxing loved the horse as much as his life. In the past, he would feed the horse himself. However, he was busy with his studies and left early and returned late every day. He really could not take care of the horse all the time, so he gave this glorious task to Qing Mei. Qing Mei did not dare to neglect and treated Xiang as the third young master in the residence. She took good care of him. In the past, when she walked to the stables, Xiang would hear her voice and pace back and forth. However, today he was unusually quiet. Qing Mei was a little worried. Was he sick? Recently, the weather had been very cold. Even people could easily catch a cold, let alone horses. Qing Mei walked to the front of the stable and took a look with the lantern in her hand. In a split second, she was stunned. A moment later, she came back to her senses and hurriedly ran towards He Yan's house. As she ran, she shouted, young lady, it's not good. Xiang has been stolen." The door was pushed open, and Qing Mei's voice stopped abruptly. The room was empty, and there was no one in sight. Her heart was in a state of panic. She looked around but didn't see He Yan's shadow. After staring blankly for a moment, she burst into tears. Bang! The door was opened again, and a man's voice sounded in the courtyard, "What happened?" Qi Wu rubbed his forehead. He had to admit that the He family was really too poor. Other than the 3 rooms in the courtyard, there were no other guest rooms. He Sui was an honest person. He wanted to give his room to Qi Wu. He Yunxing also reluctantly agreed to live in the same room as Qi Wu, but Qi Wu flatly refused. Although he didn't pay attention to his daily life, he didn't want to risk his life to become a bodyguard in someone else's residence to protect the master's safety. He even had to protect the master's main room. In the end, after thinking about it, He Sui could only vacate the innermost room in the courtyard, which was filled with junk. This room was very small. After removing the junk, there was only enough room for one bed. If Chi-woo wanted to walk, he had to walk sideways. Although he was also a bodyguard in a Shao family, the treatment was very different. Although the He family had tried their best to provide him with the best conditions, Chi-woo often wished that he could pay out of his own pocket so that the He family could move to a bigger residence. Last night, he kept watch for the first half of the night and went back to his room to rest in the second half of the night. When he woke up at this moment, he heard this young maidservant crying her heart out, so he got up to ask. Ching Mei turned around and was shocked to see Chi-woo. Chi-woo was usually quiet in the courtyard. He didn't eat with them and only slept in the junk room at night. He really didn't have much of a presence. Sometimes, Ching Mei almost forgot that he was still in the room. At this moment, when Chi-woo appeared, Ching Mei seemed to have found a life-saving straw. She rushed up and said, "Young Master Chi-woo. Young Miss and Xiang Xiang are missing. They were taken away." Chi-woo was speechless. He said, "I'll go and take a look." He Yan's bedroom was gaudy. There were fragrant sachets and red curtains hanging everywhere. Chi-woo was shocked. If he didn't have to go in, he wouldn't want to see these things. He didn't expect He Yan to be so pampered under his casual appearance. He had to tell Bai Rongwei about this when he returned. When Bai Rongwei decorated Xiao Ju's room in the future, it would be exactly what He Yan wanted. He only took a few glances and walked out of the room. Ching Mei followed him. "Young Master Chi-woo, how was it?" "She wasn't taken away. She left on her own." "How is that possible?" Ching Mei didn't believe him. How could young Miss leave on her own without saying anything? Even if she wanted to leave, she would have told us. "Young Master Chi-woo." She looked at Chi-woo suspiciously. "Don't tell me you're afraid that you can't report to Military Governor Shao, so you're pushing the responsibility to our young miss?" Chi-woo couldn't take it anymore. "Young miss, look carefully." Before your young miss was taken away, she carefully folded the bedding. The bedding was folded using the method used by the new recruits of the Liang Province Guard. It was square, like a square piece of tofu. It was obvious that it was made by He Yan. "May I ask, which assassin would wait for someone to fold the bedding before taking them away?" Ching Mei, "But, it's one thing to capture someone, but this one has never seen someone capture both a person and a horse." Ching Mei didn't say anything. After a while, she seemed to have forgotten all the accusations and suspicions she had for Chi-woo. She asked politely, "Then young Master Chi-woo, can you think of why young Miss left without saying goodbye? Forgive this one for not knowing." Chi-woo was also angry. There was only Ching Mei and him in this courtyard. Looking at Ching Mei's silly appearance, He Yan didn't need to go through so much trouble to sneak out of the fu. Without a doubt, it was to prevent him from following her. Now that she was gone, if the young master asked about it later, he would definitely be in trouble. He Yan left easily by herself, leaving him a mess of chicken feathers. He already knew that this trip to the He family wasn't going to be a good one. Sure enough, it was. What do we do now? Do we report it to the authorities? Ching Mei was at a loss. She could only stare at the only person in front of her who could still speak. Chi-woo said, "No need. I'll go look for her." Since He Yan snuck out, it was very likely that she was doing something she didn't want others to know about. It wouldn't be good to report it to the authorities and blow up the matter. He had only taken one step when his sleeve was pulled. Chi-woo turned around to look. Ching Mei grabbed him as if she was afraid that he would leave without saying goodbye. "I'll go with you." "No need. I'm the only one in this courtyard. Even Xiang Xiang isn't here." The young maidservant pursed her lips as if she was about to cry. She forced herself to hold it in. "Young Master Chi-woo, I'll go with you to look for her." Chi-woo, he was helpless. All right. He Yan could certainly guess how the family would be turned upside down after he left. However, she also believed that Chi-woo could appease Ching Mei, that crybaby. She had no other choice. If it wasn't for Mother Qin's good friend, blacksmith Niu, who only went down the mountain to Changmao blacksmith shop on the 10th of every month, she wouldn't have thought of this idea. She couldn't let Qi Wu go with her. She could only sneak out. As for other things, she would wait until she found Mother Qin and solved this matter first. Ever since Xiang Xiang came to the He family, He Yan had been taking care of her. Occasionally, when he didn't have to go to school, he would take her to the nearby river to run. The little horse ran very fast. He Yan left the city very smoothly. He asked the pedestrians along the way and finally arrived at the market at the foot of the barren mountain. This place wasn't as lively as the city. There was only one big market in the nearby villages and towns. On the 10th of every month, all kinds of businessmen would set up stalls here. Some were selling herbs, some were selling old clothes, and some were selling cattle and sheep. It was very lively and dazzling. He Yan led the horse to a shop that sold wine. The shopkeeper smiled and greeted him, "Little brother, do you want to buy wine?" He Yan dressed up as a man for convenience. He only smiled and said, "I'm going to make a pair of horseshoes for my horse. I heard that there's a blacksmith shop called Changmao Blacksmith Shop nearby." "Shopkeeper, do you know where it is?" When the shopkeeper heard this, he pointed to a direction for He Yan, "Follow this road and go straight. When you reach the end, look to your right. That's Changmao Blacksmith Shop." He Yan thanked the shopkeeper and led Xiang Xiang to the end. When he reached the end of the road, he turned around and saw a shop right in front of him. The words, Changmao Blacksmith Shop, were scribbled on the shop. He Yan tied the horse outside and walked in. There was only a white-haired old blacksmith sitting in front of an iron furnace. He was knocking on a black iron jar. "Master!" He Yan called out to him. The old blacksmith raised his head and looked at He Yan, asking, "What do you want to make?" "Sorry," He Yan said, "I'm not here to forge iron. I'm here to inquire about a person called Blacksmith Niu. I heard that he comes here every day on the 10th of every month. Has he already been here today?" He Yan was not sure. Fu Wang only said that Blacksmith Niu would come every day on the 10th of every month, but he did not say when he would come. With Blacksmith Niu's cautiousness, he must have left after finishing his business. She left the city and came here. It was almost noon. Blacksmith Niu might have already been here and left. When the old blacksmith heard this, he stopped what he was doing. He stood up and took a handkerchief soaked in water. He wiped the stains on his hands and said, "Old Niu has not come today. However, he's late. This is the first time he's late." He Yan asked, "Late?" "On the 10th of every month, in the morning, he will come here to deliver the goods. Old Niu's craftsmanship is very good." The old blacksmith said with some emotion, "I originally wanted him to come to my shop to help. The monthly salary is much higher than what he would get if he were to work by himself. According to the time, he should be here this morning to hand over the 10 iron sickles that I asked him to make last month. However, it's almost noon now." The old blacksmith looked at the sun outside and said, "He hasn't come yet. Maybe he was delayed by something on the way." He Yan said this, but her heart sank. She was afraid that Su Zhiheng had already found Mother Qin's whereabouts before her. Therefore, she could not see Blacksmith Niu now. Old Niu is a reliable person. If there's nothing important, he won't be late. The old blacksmith asked He Yan, "Gongzi, why are you looking for him?" "Ever since I met him, he has always been alone." "Gongzi knows old Niu?" He Yan smiled and said, "I don't really know him. I'm looking for him because I want to ask him about some things." The old blacksmith nodded and pointed to a wooden plank at the side. "Gongzi, please sit here. We'll talk when old Niu arrives." He Yan sat down. However, he did not expect that he would sit for an entire day. The sun gradually set and the sky began to darken. The old blacksmith finished his work for the day. He washed his hands and changed his clothes. He stood up and said to He Yan, "Gongzi, it seems that old Niu won't be coming today. The market is about to end. I'm going to close the shop. He tactfully indicated that it was time for He Yan to leave. He Yan's heart sank like a piece of sugar too. He forced a smile and said, "Okay." However, he was still worried and said to the old blacksmith solemnly, "Master, please don't mention today's matter to anyone. Blacksmith Nyo is the same. In a few days, I'll come again." After the old blacksmith agreed, He Yan led his horse and left. The people in the market dispersed in twos and threes. There was only a mess left after the bustle during the day. A mother and son from a poor family were bending over to pick up the leftovers. The lanterns in the distance gradually lit up. He Yan led his horse and walked slowly. It was hard for him to be happy. He originally thought that Fu Wang had found a clue and came here today to find Mother Qin's whereabouts from Blacksmith Nyo. However, he did not expect to find anything. For the past few months, Blacksmith Nyo would go to the blacksmith's shop on time every month to deliver the goods. However, he did not come today. He waited from morning to night and disappeared. It was not a matter of time. Either Blacksmith Nyo took Mother Qin and moved away again, or he could not come back. He Yan's eyes darkened. When he returned home, the house was already in chaos. He Sui was not back yet, and He Yunsheng was preparing to go out. The whole family was noisy. When He Yan led his horse back, Qing Mei was at the door. When she saw He Yan, she thought that she had seen wrongly. She rubbed her eyes and rushed over, shouting, "Miss, you're back." He Yan did not have time to speak before He Yunsheng took the lead and put on a punitive look. He said, "Where did you go? You even took Xiang with you." For a moment, He Yan didn't know whether he was concerned about Xiang or himself. After thinking for a moment, he said, "I just had nothing to do today. I haven't been out these days, so I took Xiang out for a walk." "Since you wanted to go out, why didn't you take her with you?" He Yunsheng looked at Qi Wu, who was silent at the side. "You didn't even say goodbye." "Ah," He Yan pretended to be surprised, "I left a note on the table before I left." "Didn't you see it?" "If you didn't see it, perhaps a swallow flew in from outside and took it away." "It's the middle of winter. How could there be a swallow?" He Yunsheng looked coldly at her, lying. "Where did you go?" "I just went out for a walk. I didn't do anything. I saw that it was still early and Qi Wu was not awake yet. I thought that I shouldn't wake him up. Anyway, I'll be back in a while. I didn't expect that I would forget the time as soon as I went out. I'm sorry. I was playful this time. It won't happen again." He Yan apologized without any sincerity. Qi Wu. Was she saying that he was sleeping too soundly? He Yunsheng was angry. He Yan. "I'm hungry. Did Qing Mei cook?" He Yan touched his stomach. It was true. She had waited in the blacksmith's shop for the whole day and did not leave at all. She was afraid that she would miss Blacksmith Nyo at the last moment. She even bought 2 steamed buns at the door to eat. I did. Qing Mei quickly went to the kitchen to bring out the food. "Miss, if you're hungry, eat first. This servant has been heating up the porridge. It's just right to taste it now." "Thank you." He Yan replied with a smile. He Yunsheng was angry at He Yan, but there was nothing he could do. He Yan had never been able to control what she wanted to do. For a moment, he was angry and helpless. He could only sit down at the table with He Yan. He picked up the chopsticks and ate without tasting the food. Qi Wu stood by the door. He was also puzzled. He Yan had been out for the whole day. On this day, he and Qing Mei looked everywhere for He Yan, but they could not find her. He Yunsheng almost went to report it to the authorities. He Yan looked safe and sound, and there were not many flaws in her expression. But, where did she go? In a room in a remote courtyard, a man and a woman sat opposite each other. They were not young anymore. The man's skin was dark, and his face was full of wrinkles. His fingers were dirty, but he was strong. One look and one could tell that he was a man who worked hard. The woman was in her 40s. Although her clothes were ordinary and unremarkable, her skin was tender and she looked like a middle-aged woman. She did not look like she had suffered. The man was in a better state, but the woman looked particularly frightened. Their hands and feet were tied with ropes, and they couldn't move even half a step. Their mouths could still speak, but after calling for a long time, no one came to answer. "Old Nyo, what's going on?" the woman asked. Her voice was full of panic. This man and woman were Blacksmith Nyo and his lover, Mother Chin, whom He Yen was looking for. Blacksmith Nyo shook his head. This man looked dull, but his eyes were sharp. He looked around and said, "Maybe they're from the Su family." Upon hearing the two words, Su family, Mother Chin's entire body couldn't help but tremble. She had entered the Su family with Hiwanru. Hiwanru was favored, and as a nanny, she also lived a good life. She ate and used much better than when she was in the He family. Unfortunately, the good times did not last long. Ever since Hiwanru died, she lived a life of wandering and hiding. Mother Chin could not help but shudder at the thought of Hiwanru's death. Hiwanru was raised by her. Although she was a little arrogant, she trusted her nanny very much. Nanny Chin had reminded Hiwanru before that some things were secrets and the fewer people who knew about them, the better. If someone told you the secret without any concealment, it was not because they trusted you, but because you were already a dead person in their eyes. The dead could keep secrets the best. She had tried to persuade Hiwanru to pack up her belongings and escape with her. Unfortunately, Hiwanru did not believe her, so Hiwanru died in the Su family's residence. Before Hiwanru died, Mother Chin had predicted her fate. She wrote a letter to her old lover, hoping that Blacksmith Nyo could help take care of her family after she died. Although Blacksmith Nyo was a craftsman who did rough work, he had a flexible mind. He also had some feelings for Nanny Chin, so he gave Nanny Chin an idea. He thought that if she died, Nanny Chin's children and grandchildren would still be in danger. It was better to escape. Su Jihan might not dare to do anything to Mother Chin's family because of his misgivings. When Mother Chin heard this, she felt that Blacksmith Nyo's words were reasonable. As for where to escape, it was naturally up to Blacksmith Nyo. For the past year, she and Blacksmith Nyo had been hiding in the barren mountains and had indeed lived a peaceful life. But last night, for some reason, a group of strangers suddenly broke into the thatched hut on the mountain and easily subdued them. When they woke up, they were already in this room. "Old Nyo, are we going to die?" Mother Chin asked timidly. "They found us and won't let us live, my grandson, and you. I've implicated you." Blacksmith Nyo said, "Ah Chin, don't be afraid. I don't think they want our lives." Mother Chin raised her head. "What did you say? If there was a chance to live, who would want to die so easily?" Mother Chin also did not want to die. When she heard Blacksmith Nyo's words, a glimmer of light flashed through her eyes. If it was Su Jiheng, he would have taken action when he found us. He would not have let us live until now. Blacksmith Nyo comforted her. "At least we are not in danger now." Then you mean that the person who caught us was not Master Su?" Mother Chin asked in confusion. "Then why did he catch us?" "I don't know either." Mother Chin fell silent. Sometimes, the fear of the unknown was the scariest. The other party just left the two of them here and did not ask about them. It was more suspicious than if he had revealed his identity from the beginning. After an unknown period of time, someone's voice sounded from outside. Mother Chin's spirits rose. She looked expectantly at the closed door. The door was pushed open and someone walked in. The first to enter were two black-clothed people, a man and a woman. Their expressions did not reveal anything. The last to enter was a young man. He was exceptionally handsome. Based on his clothes, he did not seem to be from an ordinary family. Mother Chin had served the Su family for many years. She still had a bit of insight. When she saw the three people, she knew that the handsome young man was the master. She immediately said, "Sir, spare my life. Sir, spare my life." However, blacksmith Nyo did not say a word. He only silently sized up the newcomers. The handsome young man sat down on a chair in the middle of the room. The two black-clothed people stood by his side. His gaze swept past the two of them and finally landed on Mother Qin. His expression was clearly calm, but it made Mother Qin shiver. "You are the wet nurse of the Su family's Hiwanru?" that person asked. Mother Qin's heart sank. She had originally held on to a fluke, but now that this person spoke, she understood that he was here for the Su family's secret. She said, "Indeed. Sir." Before she could finish speaking, she was interrupted by the other party. The young man said indifferently, "How did Hiwanru die?" If he lies, he will die." He raised his chin slightly and looked in blacksmith Nyo's direction. Chapter 213. Nanny Qin was stunned. This person was very young. He looked even younger than Su Zhiheng. However, when he looked over, his gaze was like a cold pool that chilled her to the bone. She had never seen this person before and didn't know his identity. However, her intuition told her that he was more dangerous than Su Zhiheng. Nanny Qin was a widow when she was young. However, she was beautiful when she was young. After her husband died, it wasn't like she couldn't get married. However, she wasn't willing to give her son to a distant relative. Other men were willing to marry her, but they weren't willing to raise a burden. Only blacksmith Nyo was willing. However, Nanny Qin looked down on blacksmith Nyo's status and thought that he was poor. Later, when she entered the Aichi estate and her life became better, she gave up on the idea of marriage. However, there was an unclear relationship between her and blacksmith Nyo. Nanny Qin originally didn't care much about blacksmith Nyo. However, after Hiwanru's accident, blacksmith Nyo gave her a way out. During the days when the two of them went through thick and thin together, Nanny Qin did develop some true feelings for him. This young man hit the snake where it hurts. He immediately threatened blacksmith Nyo's life. Nanny Qin was much more passive. She said, "Concubine mother he. Concubine mother he made a mistake and was punished by the madam. Concubine mother he's body was weak and couldn't endure it, so she passed away." After saying this, she looked at the young man and sized up his expression. The other party's expression was still indifferent and his voice was calm. "I don't have the patience to listen to your nonsense. If you think this person's life isn't enough, I can add the lives of Wu Han and his son." As soon as he said this, Nanny Qin cried out, "No." Wu Han was her son. This person threatened her with the lives of his son and grandson. The other party wasn't Su Zhiheng. If Su Zhiheng killed her son and grandson, he would still be afraid that Nanny Qin would fight to the death and reveal the truth. However, this strange man didn't seem to care. He didn't have any information on her, but he knew her like the back of his hand. Nanny Qin fell to the ground. In an instant, her heart was filled with despair. "Don't worry, I don't intend to take your life." He leaned forward slightly and stared into Mother Qin's eyes. There seemed to be a sharp glint in his clear, watery eyes. "Su Zhiheng's people have been keeping an eye on Wu Han and his son to force you to show yourself. But if you tell me what you know, I can save their lives." Granny Qin was shocked. This condition was too tempting. For the first time in her life, she was bold. "How can this servant believe you?" The other party smiled carelessly and stretched out his hand. The black-robed man behind him stepped forward and handed him a bracelet. The young man waved the bracelet in front of Mother Qin. Qin Mama was shocked. This bracelet was made by someone when her grandson was born. She even asked an eminent monk to consecrate it so that it could protect her grandson's safety and health. Now that she had fallen into the other party's hands, she knew that there was no way she could negotiate with the other party. The only thing she could do was to convince the other party to let her family and blacksmith Nyo go. I'll tell you everything." Mother Qin mournfully said, concubine he was executed by the eldest brother. The family law was just a cover. Concubine he was locked up in the mansion and was afraid that outsiders would find out. She was fed medicine every day and passed away after a few days. The young man was not surprised and only asked, why did Su Zhiheng execute He Wanru? Because concubine he made a big mistake and had to die. What mistake? Mother Qin's hand trembled. She took a deep breath as if she wanted to give herself a bit of courage. After a while, she said, because concubine he killed young mistress. When these words came out, the room became silent. Wanning and Fei Nu behind them were shocked. Everyone in Shuajing knew that the young mistress of the Su family was blind and couldn't see clearly. She accidentally fell into the pond and drowned. But now, it was said that the young mistress died in the hands of a concubine. How absurd was this? No matter what, the young mistress of the He family, He Rufei's younger sister, had a high status. If she died because of jealousy with a concubine, it was too absurd. No wonder Su Zhiheng couldn't wait to execute He Wanru and all the people who knew about it. Otherwise, if the imperial censor reported that he didn't manage the family strictly, Su Zhiheng would lose his black hat. However, if the He family didn't know, why would they send another daughter over when one of their daughters had already died? If the He family knew, why would they let it go so easily? Xiao Ju's eyes slightly moved. Mother Qin's words confirmed his guess. Why did He Wanru kill young Mistress Su? He changed his words, why did Su Zhiheng kill young Mistress Su? Mother Qin was shocked and quickly said, no, young master, concubine he killed young mistress. It was a matter between women and has nothing to do with other people. Why would the eldest brother kill young mistress without any reason? The eldest brother is kind and gentle, how could he do such a thing? Xiao Ju looked at her indifferently, I said before, I don't have the patience to listen to your lies. In the next moment, the sword in Fei Nu's hand was pressed against blacksmith Niu's neck. Blood flowed down his neck. No one could be indifferent in a life and death situation. The man, who had always been calm and composed, couldn't help but reveal a trace of panic in his eyes. Mother Qin was so scared that her face turned pale. No, stop. Fei Nu's sword didn't go any further. Xiao Ju said, I'll ask one more time. Why did Su Zhiheng kill his wife? If Mother Qin was still hesitant and unwilling to tell the truth at this juncture, it seemed that the matter she was hiding was not a small secret. Mother Qin closed her eyes and seemed to be in a panic. The other party's sword seemed to be slowly pressing against blacksmith Niu's neck. The bracelet engraved with scriptures was clearly in front of her eyes. She suddenly said loudly, I don't know. I don't know. I was too scared. I advised her not to do it, but she said that it was the eldest brother's idea and that it didn't matter. She would do as the eldest brother said and nothing would happen. I was very far away and I was very scared. I only vaguely heard concubine he say to young mistress, General he. Xiao Ju suddenly looked up. In an instant, his eyes were as sharp as a knife, so piercing that Mother Qin didn't dare to speak. He asked, what did you just say? Mother Qin trembled as she said, concubine he said to young mistress. General he, at that time, she was scared to death. Although there were many swords in the residence that didn't see blood, Mother Qin had never directly touched a human life. Of course, she also wanted He Wanru's position in the Su family to be stable. However, Mother Qin clearly saw that with He Wanru's family background, she would never be able to become Su Zhiheng's wife. Therefore, when He Wanru told her that she wanted to kill He Yan, Mother Qin was shocked and tried her best to persuade her to give up the idea. However, He Wanru steeled her heart and refused to listen to her. Mother Qin felt that it was strange. In the end, He Wanru finally revealed the truth. This matter was ordered by Su Zhiheng and the person who wanted to kill He Yan was Su Zhiheng. However, He Wanru refused to say why Su Zhiheng wanted to kill He Yan. She only said that it was a secret between her and Su Zhiheng. At that time, Mother Qin had actually already realized that something was wrong. Unfortunately, Hiwanru had been spoiled by her family when she was young and married into the Su family. Su Jiheng had a gentle temperament. Even the head of the family, He Yan, didn't care about the family's affairs. Hiwanru was ambitious and brainless. She didn't listen to Mother Qin's words. By the time Mother Qin wanted to do something, it was already too late. When He Yan was drowned that day, Mother Qin hid among the old women outside and was extremely shocked. Hiwanru's battle array was too big. With so many people, it was as if she didn't have any scruples. She vaguely heard the conversation between Hiwanru and He Yan. It was as if they were talking in riddles and didn't speak clearly. However, Mother Qin clearly remembered that Hiwanru called He Yan General He. General He was General Feihong, He Rufei, and He Yan's elder brother. What did this have to do with He Yan? At that time, Mother Qin didn't understand in her panic. It wasn't until she escaped from the Su family and wandered around with blacksmith Niu that she carefully thought about this matter and smelled a trace of something unusual. She seemed to have caught a glimpse of this secret, but this was really too sensational. Once this secret was exposed to the world, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, Mother Qin would never speak of this matter unless it was absolutely necessary. Now, every time she thought of the scene that day, she felt a chill all over her body. That day, under the watchful eyes of everyone, young Mistress Su was forced into a pool of cold water and never came out again. However, everyone who was present at that time was already dead in the eyes of others. Even Hiwanru didn't expect that Su Jiheng would make a move on her not long after he took his wife's life. It was all karmic retribution that was fated in the underworld. No one spoke in the room. Mother Qin couldn't help but raise her head to look at the other party. Her heart was on tenterhooks. This was her biggest secret. She didn't know who the other party was or why they wanted to know. Continue, Xiao Ju said. It was better to have someone speak than to remain silent. Mother Qin simply said everything. After young mistress died, I predicted that concubine mother he would most likely be silenced by the eldest son. I was afraid and wanted to ask concubine mother he to escape with me, but she refused. At that time, all the servants in the residence, especially those who were present in concubine mother's courtyard that day, were forbidden from leaving the residence. When I escaped, I asked around and heard that all the servants in concubine mother he's courtyard had been replaced. They were all dead. My lord. As Mother Qin spoke, she wiped away her tears. This is all I know. Although I served concubine mother he before, concubine mother he refused to tell me why the eldest son wanted to kill young mistress. I'm only a servant of the Su family. I don't know anything. I beg you to let us go. Xiao Ju stood up and looked at the two of them, saying, you two can stay here for the time being. Then he walked out of the room. The imperial bodyguards outside the door followed him in. Xiao Ju walked forward. This wasn't a Xiao family, but a courtyard. Wanning and Fei Nu walked beside Xiao Ju. They were both shocked. Xiao Ju walked to the end of the courtyard and stopped at the flower wall. He had already arrived. There were only green leaves on the flower wall. There were no red flowers. His voice fell in the wind, carrying a biting cold. Wanning, when was he Rufei and young Mistress Su's birthday? Wanning replied, it was the spring equinox. On that day, first Madam He and second Madam He gave birth at the same time. He Rufei and young Mistress Su were born at the same time. Their birthdays were all the spring equinox. After saying this, she and Fei Nu looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. When they were in Jinling, they already knew from Hua Yuxian that He Rufei at that time was a woman. Now, He Rufei's actions in the Battle of Hua Yuan clearly indicated that he wasn't He Rufei at that time. Xiao Ju had always ordered Wanning to investigate the women who were close to He Rufei. But now, it seemed that there was no need to investigate anymore. Although Mother Qin only said, General He, these three words were already very clear. He Rufei at that time, he Rufei who studied in the Xianchang school, he Rufei who went to the Cloud Pavilion with the other youths in Jinling, and he Rufei who had outstanding military achievements in the Fuyue army, was actually young Mistress Su's cousin who was born at the same time as he Rufei. And now, young Mistress Su was already dead. No one in the world knew this secret, so he Rufei became the real General Fei Hong. Continue to investigate everything related to young Mistress Su's life, Xiao Ju said. The relationship between Su Zhiheng and He Rufei may not be simple. Su Zhiheng should know about He Rufei and his cousin's identity swapping. Wanning nodded in agreement. Suddenly, she thought of something and hesitated for a moment before saying, "But young master, Miss He bribed the Su family's manservant to ask about Mother Qin's whereabouts. I think it's because of this. He Rufei and young Mistress Su's identity swapping was a secret, so how did Miss He know? And why did she investigate this matter?" He Rufei and the Su family both had their eyes on Miss He. Previously, this subordinate thought that their real target was young master, but now it seems that this might not be the case. What role did Miss He play in this? Wanning was much older than Xiao Ju and had practically watched Xiao Ju grow up. Many times, she was not as nervous about Xiao Ju as Qi Wu and Fei Nu. She said whatever was on her mind. Xiao Ju didn't say anything. On the other hand, Fei Nu couldn't help but say, "Miss He and young Mistress Su have the same name. That's just a coincidence." Wanning continued without thinking, "I've investigated. Miss He is Miss He, there's no substitute identity. Moreover, Miss He's name has always been this name. There's no other possibility. I originally thought that young Mistress Su might have a twin sister, but the age doesn't match. Moreover, the He family's neighbors can testify that Miss He looks like her mother. Therefore, He Yan definitely couldn't be young Mistress Su's twin sister. Regarding He Yan, let's stop here." Xiao Ju said, "I know what I'm doing." Fei Nu and Wanning looked at each other in dismay. No one had thought that such a simple matter would lead to so many follow-ups. Not only did they discover the shocking secret of He Rufei and his cousin's identity swap, now even He Yan's behavior became confusing. But since Xiao Ju had spoken, they could only do as instructed. Xiao Ju said, "Watch these two people, don't let them escape." The two complied. When Fei Nu and Wanning left to do their own things, Xiao Ju looked at the quiet sky. In the winter of Shuajing, there were only a few stars scattered on the black velvet cloth, like the glimmering light of a clear spring in the sky. Under the water, lanterns were lively and bright. The longevity noodles on the boat were steaming hot, and the cups made of leaves were sweet like honey. The girl's face was hidden behind the lanterns. At that time, the night was too beautiful, and the wind was too cool, so much so that people neglected to notice that her eyes were a little red from the steam rising from them. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Isn't today your birthday?" The girl's eyes curved, "Commander-in-Chief, you're so good to me, thank you." He slowly lowered his head, and his gaze fell on the reflection of the water in the pond beside his boots. That day was Jiang's Water God Festival, the spring equinox. He Yan's mood was really not good. Since she wasn't able to find blacksmith Niu and find Mother Qin's whereabouts, she had many suspicions in her heart. If Su Zhiheng had found Mother Qin before her, Mother Qin would have been doomed. To her, she would have lost an important witness. She originally wanted to see Fu Wang, but now she was embarrassingly short of money, and the Su family's manservant was particularly greedy. If she went empty-handed, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to get any useful information. Therefore, on the second day He Yan returned from the market, everyone in the He family noticed that she was in low spirits. "Yan, father was passing by East Street today. I heard that the young ladies who came to Shuajing had a kind of perfume. Father bought one for you. You can apply it on your hands every day, and it will also smell good." He Yan listlessly said, "Thank you, father." He Sui was also very distressed. Originally, this daughter of his was born with the countenance of a flower and the face of the moon. Although her temperament was a little arrogant, she was still a girl, so she was delicate and lovable. Her colleagues and friends all knew that this daughter of his was weak and beautiful. Now that He Yan was back, her temperament was completely different from before. Not only did she wake up in the morning to practice martial arts and chop firewood, she didn't use the rouge and face powder that he bought for her in the past. She wore a plain face all day long, and even picked up a skirt to wear as if it didn't affect her work. Although this was also very good, the difference was too big. Sometimes, He Yan looked at her and missed the delicate daughter of the past. Therefore, he tried to buy some small things to make He Yan remember that she was a woman. Although he felt that He Yan was also very good like this, General Fengyun was marrying a wife, not marrying a brother back. He Yan and Xiao Ju couldn't go out together. Outsiders would say that He Yan looked more like a man than Xiao Ju. What kind of situation would that be? He Yan didn't know that his actions had already distressed He Sui to such an extent. She was only concerned about Mother Qin's matter. Although he knew that blacksmith Niu would most likely not appear in Changmao Ironworks again, there was still a trace of hope in his heart. After another 2 days, before the sun rose and He Sui and He Yunxing left the house, He Yan quietly got up in the dark, folded the bedding, and led Xiang Xiang to the town again. Therefore, when Qing Mei got up to feed the horse, she screamed like she did a few days ago. This time, she was much more mature than the last time. She didn't cry when she saw that there was no one in the house. Instead, she walked to Qi Wu's room and politely knocked on the door. Qi Wu opened the door. "What's the matter?" Qing Mei smiled and scolded him. "Young Master Qi Wu, did you sleep too soundly?" Miss took Xiang Xiang out again. "Didn't you notice?" Qi Wu. Chapter 214. This time, He Yan went to Changmao blacksmith shop very early. As for the chaos after she left, Qi Wu would probably appease Qing Mei. The first time was unfamiliar, the second time was familiar. Now that she knew the way, her journey would be much smoother. However, she did not expect that there would be guests at home today. When Xiao Ju arrived at the He residence, there was not a single person at home. Qing Mei was not there, Qi Wu was not there, and He Yan was definitely not there. The He residence's main door was tightly shut. It was already dilapidated and looked like an abandoned old residence that no one lived in. Xiao Jing and Bai Rongwei had visited once before. After returning home, Bai Rongwei tactfully asked if they should find another residence for the He family. Xiao Ju refused. Although this was not a difficult matter, with He Yan's temperament, he would probably say something like, "I don't deserve a reward for nothing." Emperor Wen Xian was also an emperor who did not eat the hardships of the world. He was given the title of Marquis, but he was not given a residence. Even his salary was suspended for a year. However, when he was in the Liang province guards, He Yan also received some silver as a reward. This silver should be enough to buy a residence for the time being. He Yan lived on a street that was surrounded by ordinary people. During the day, they all had to go out to work. It was unlike the previous night when everyone came to watch. There was no one at home. Xiao Ju pondered for a moment and was about to leave. Just as she turned around, she bumped into someone. This person saw Xiao Ju and was shocked. "Military Governor Xiao, why are you here?" It was Jiang Jiao. Jiang Jiao did not wear the robes of the new recruits today. He only wore a bamboo-colored brocade robe. Xiao Ju did not immediately recognize him. However, as soon as Jiang Jiao spoke, he secretly scolded himself. He Yan was now Xiao Ju's fiancée. It was natural for Xiao Ju to come to find her. Why was he surprised? "Military Governor Xiao is here to find Brother He. Miss He, right?" Jiang Jiao wanted to redeem himself a little, but he looked at the tightly shut door behind him. "I just passed by here and asked a fruit vendor. He said that this is the He family. Why, is there no one in their house today?" Xiao Ju shook her head and looked at him. "Why are you here?" "Oh, I'm here to give Miss He a sword." Jiang Jiao scratched his head. The soldiers in the camp who live in Shuajing have 1 day a month to go home to visit their families. I went home yesterday, so I should return to the camp today. Before I go back, I want to give this sword to Miss He. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows slightly. Jiang Jiao snapped out of his daze. He was afraid that Xiao Ju would misunderstand, so he explained, it's because Miss He was assassinated in Shuajing a few days ago. Everyone in the Yangzhou guards knows about it. My brothers are worried that something might happen to her. My family runs a martial arts club, so I wrote a letter to my father asking him to find a sword for Miss He. He weighed the long sword wrapped in cloth in his hand and seemed to be surprised. It's not a precious sword, but it's light and sharp. Since Miss He has a sword with her, if she goes out in the future, even if she is attacked by blind assassins, she will still have a suitable weapon in her hand. Sword? Xiao Ju frowned. Why would you want to give her a sword? Ah. Jiang Jiao didn't expect Xiao Ju to ask such a question. Miss He's swordsmanship is exquisite. If I want to give her a weapon, of course I should give her a sword. Although her whip and knife skills are good, I think her swordsmanship is better, so I chose this sword. Xiao Ju stared into his eyes. How did you know that He Yan's swordsmanship is exquisite? It was when we were in the Rundu. Jiang Jiao suddenly understood. Oh right, when Miss He used the sword, the commander-in-chief wasn't in the Rundu yet, so he didn't see it. Wang Ba, I, and the others all saw it. That day, Miss He led us to attack the Yudo camp. We all wore devil masks. The mask Miss He wore was different. According to Lord Li, it was exactly the same as the mask General Feihong wore. That day, Miss He wore the mask and pretended to be General Feihong to defeat the Yudo. At that time, she used a sword. Although I haven't seen General Feihong use a sword, I feel that Miss He's swordsmanship isn't inferior to his. Jiang Jiao finished speaking in one breath and realized that he had said too much. Although he and He Yan were friends and had nothing to do with each other, now that He Yan was Xiao Ju's fiancé, it was better to avoid arousing suspicion. Thus, he coughed lightly. I came here today to deliver the sword. I didn't expect Miss He to be home alone. Since we met Military Governor Xiao here, why don't Military Governor Xiao give this sword to Miss He? He handed the cloth bag in his hand to Xiao Ju. It's getting late. I have to leave the city and return to the camp. I'll have to trouble Military Governor Xiao with this matter. Thank you. He cupped his hands in salute to Xiao Ju, then carried the cloth bag from home and turned to leave. Jiang Jiao's figure disappeared at the end of the long street. Xiao Ju lowered his head and looked at the long sword in his hand. The long sword was very light and looked thin and small. He lowered his eyes and seemed to have thought of something. After a while, he turned and left in another direction. That day, He Yan returned empty-handed. The old master of Changmao blacksmith shop told He Yan that blacksmith Niu had not appeared in the past few days. Even the 10 iron sickles that he ordered last month had not been delivered. The old master and blacksmith Niu had some friendship. Although the iron sickles were important, blacksmith Niu would not miss the appointment if there was nothing urgent. He Yan asked the old master if he knew where blacksmith Niu lived. The old master shook his head and said that blacksmith Niu lived on a barren mountain. As for the specific location, no one knew. Blacksmith Niu did not like to tell others about his family matters, so it was inconvenient for others to inquire. The matter was very clear. Blacksmith Niu and Mother Qin had most likely been found by Su Zhiheng's men before she did. This was, indeed, a depressing business. When she returned home, He Sui and He Yunsheng had not returned because she had left early today. For the time being, they did not discover her sneaking out. On the other hand, Qing Mei was sitting on the doorstep waiting for him. When she saw He Yan leading the horse to the door, she immediately stood up happily and said, "Miss, you're finally back. I just went out for a stroll and lost track of time." He Yan continued to brush her off. "Miss, he went out before dawn. May I ask which market he went to?" Qi Wu walked out from behind the door and asked in an unfriendly tone. He and Qing Mei had just arrived home not long ago. To be honest, Qi Wu did not think that going out to look for them would yield any results. If He Yan wanted to hide from them, who would be able to find him? However, whenever he revealed the slightest thought that there was no need to go out to look for them, the young maidservant in front of him would immediately cry. Qi Wu almost suspected that Qing Mei was so persistent in looking for He Yan for an entire day because she wanted to go out for a stroll. It was a pity that a grown man like him had to be dragged around the streets by a young maidservant for an entire day. Shao family's secret guards were not few in number in the capital. Who knew what rumors would spread in the Nine Flags camp tomorrow? What made him feel even more defeated was that not only did He Yan leave by himself, he even took a horse with him. It was right under his nose, yet he did not discover anything. He was even mocked by Qing Mei for his lack of skills. Who knew how He Yan managed to escape? However, He Yan was even more defeated than Qi Wu today. He left early and returned late, without any results at all. What made his heart ache even more was the money he spent bribing Fu Wang. It was not easy to find a clue, but now it was all gone. It was truly a loss of both the money and the person. She mumbled a few perfunctory words and said, "I'm a little tired after strolling around for an entire day. I'm going back to my room to rest." Without waiting for Qing Mei's reply, she went straight into her room. Qing Mei stood outside the door and blinked her eyes. She said to Qi Wu, "Imperial bodyguard Qi Wu, don't sleep too soundly today. Pay attention to the sounds coming from Mrs. room at night." Qi Wu, now, she did not even call him young master Qi Wu and directly called him Imperial bodyguard Qi Wu. What did she mean by that? Was she telling him not to sleep at night? Ha, what a joke. At night, when the lanterns were lit, the sound of drunkards singing could be heard from the distant market. Shuo capital finally welcomed the first snow of this winter. The snowflakes were like salt floss. The wind blew in from outside the city, sending snowflakes flying everywhere. On the pomegranate tree in front of the window, the pomegranates had long been ripe and weighed heavily on the branches. It was as if they would fall off by themselves and fall into the snowy soil with just a light touch. Green tea was simmering on the stove in the room. The 4 square windows just happened to reflect the snowy scene. Someone stood in front of the window, looking at the snow outside in a daze. Although I have not seen how General Feihong uses a sword, I feel that Miss He's swordsmanship is not inferior to his. Jiang Jiao's words appeared in his ears again. He turned around, walked to the table, and picked up the long sword on the table. The silk cloth wrapped around the sword had already been pulled open, revealing the complete appearance of the sword. The sword was very narrow, probably to make it easier for a woman to hold. It was completely black, and the scabbard was engraved with fine patterns. It was also very light. Everyone knew that the 2 famous generals of Dawei, General Fengyun's autumn drinking sword and General Feihong's Qinglang sword, were the sharpest weapons in the world. They could cut through gold like mud. What was more precious than their swords was their swordsmanship. The tip of the sword was sharp and had already reached perfection. When he was young, he met He Rufei. He Rufei's swordsmanship really could not be considered beautiful. Later on, he secretly taught him, and it was better than before. However, ever since He Rufei joined the army, he had not had the opportunity to see He Rufei use a sword. Therefore, he had only heard of He Rufei's swordsmanship. There was a thick stack of letters on the table. Xiao Ju casually picked it up and flipped through it a few times. His eyes narrowed slightly. He Rufei and Su Wanru were born at the same time on the spring equinox. He Rufei entered the Xian Changguan when he was 14 years old. He Rufei joined the Fuyue army when he was 15 years old. He Rufei's military achievements became more and more prominent. Not long before he returned to the capital to receive his reward, the He family's second miss, He Yan, also returned to the capital. He Rufei received his reward and was conferred the title of General Feihong. It happened almost at the same time as the He family's second miss and Su Zhiheng's engagement. The He family's second miss became Su Wanru. 3 months after Su Wanru married into the Su family, Su Wanru became blind. A year later, she lost her footing and drowned. Regarding this deceased Su Wanru, there were pitifully few things that could be found about her life. Other than marrying Su Jiheng, she did not do anything noteworthy in the He family. It was as if she was an inconspicuous speck of dust that few people paid attention to. The only thing in her life that could be tainted with a bit of brilliance was that after returning to the capital, she had a good marriage that everyone was envious of. Unfortunately, this little bit of good fortune seemed to have used up all of her luck. After that, she became blind and died. Like a speck of dust, she returned to nothingness. Her birth and death, compared to her brother Hirufei, were like tiny pebbles thrown into the ocean, unable to cause the slightest splash. When people heard it, at most, they could only sigh. A pitiful, lowly woman who no one paid any attention to. He picked up another letter. This letter was different from Su Wanru's. It was densely packed with records of all the interesting things that happened to a girl with the same name and surname since she was born. She was the daughter of He Sui, the military officer of the city gate. Although her mother died when she was young and her family was poor, she was pampered and spoiled by her father's care. She was lively, just like any other young girl who grew up in an ordinary family in the marketplace. She loved rouge, fragrant powder, and beautiful clothes. Her hands were unable to lift her shoulders, and her biggest wish was to marry into a well-off family. If this family also had an official position in their hands and a handsome husband, then she would be thankful to the heavens and earth. Her dispute with Fan Cheng was known to all of the neighbors. If they wanted to know about a little girl who grew up on the street, they could easily go door to door and ask about her past. It was precisely because of this that the Lady He that the neighbors spoke of and the He Yen of the Marquis Wuan were like two different people. Lady He loved to be beautiful and charming, but He Yen only wore men's clothes all day long. Lady He was particular about clothing and residence. He Yen could even squeeze into a large bunk with a dozen or so other men. Lady He had a delicate and weak body. She would pant after taking 2 steps. He Yen ran on time every day in the Liang province guard. She could easily throw 100 jean stone weight. It was the same face, but her temperament was completely different. She knew how to memorize Wu Zi's art of war, and knew the drill of military formations like the back of her hand. She could see the weakness of Yudo's military strategy at a glance, and she could also face the enemy's long blade without batting an eyelid. It was impossible for such a genius to exist in the world, and it was impossible for such a genius to appear in the Liang province guard. However, if this person wasn't a genius, but rather a valiant general who grew up in a treacherous battlefield, then it seemed that all those inexplicable things had a reasonable explanation. Xiao Ju was silent for a moment. She put all the letters in her hands back into the drawer and turned to leave. His courtyard was very large, and there were many empty rooms. Xiao Ju walked directly to the innermost room. There were guards at the door. When they saw Xiao Ju walk over, they made way for her. Xiao Ju walked in. Inside the room, Mother Qin and blacksmith Niu were sitting on the edge of the bed, talking about something. When she saw Xiao Ju, Mother Qin was so frightened that she immediately stood up and said, "Sir." Currently, Su Zhiheng was searching everywhere for Mother Qin's whereabouts. The 2 brothers that he had brought back from outside the city were still in that courtyard. It would be troublesome for Mother Qin to stay there, so Xiao Ju ordered people to send them to their own courtyard. Even if Su Zhiheng had the guts as big as the sky, he wouldn't dare to go to the Xiao family to look for them. There were guards at the door, so Mother Qin couldn't escape. After Xiao Ju walked in, she didn't say anything. She only looked at Mother Qin. Mother Qin's body trembled slightly. Up until now, she still didn't know anything about this handsome young man. However, every time she looked into his eyes, she couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. "How did young Mistress Su die?" Xiao Ju asked. Mother Qin was stunned for a moment, then she subconsciously replied, "Concubine mother he killed her." "I'm asking, How did she die? Only then did Mother Qin return to her senses. She swallowed her saliva and said, "This servant isn't too clear about what happened that day. I only know that young mistress's maidservant first gave young mistress a cup of tea with something in it. Young mistress knew martial arts, and her martial arts weren't bad. They were probably afraid that young mistress would escape. After that, young mistress couldn't move. Those servants used a stick to beat young mistress. They dragged her to the pond and pressed her head into it." As if recalling the tragic situation that day, Mother Qin felt a chill run down her spine as she spoke. Young Mistress Su died too tragically. She didn't struggle, didn't scream, didn't beg for mercy, and didn't break down like those who were on the verge of death. She only stubbornly resisted fate. She was clearly blind and couldn't see anything, but there was a fire in her eyes. She was determined, tenacious, and worked hard to resist. It was precisely because of this that when the body was pressed into the pool and gradually stopped moving and losing its breath, it was so frightening. Mother Qin closed her eyes. Young mistress drowned. However, she didn't lose her footing and drown. She was pressed into the pond and drowned alive. Xiao Ju's fingertips trembled. The past gradually appeared in front of her eyes. On the billowing smoke of the canal, there was a sea of fire. The spring water was still cold. The girl underwater was not as lively as before. Although she could swim, her body gradually stiffened. Her expression was pained. Her long hair spread out in the water like fragile glass. It was as if she would disappear in the next moment. Those who were burned by fire would avoid it when they saw it. Those who fell off their horses and got injured would never get on their horses again. As for those who died in the cold pond, when they entered the water again in the future, they would never be able to let go of the cold pond water and the despair of not being able to see the sun. So that's how it was. Mother Qin didn't know the deeper meaning behind his question. She continued to plead, "Sir, this servant really didn't participate. It was concubine he who did it. No, it was sir who ordered people to do it. This servant only stood among those servants. This servant didn't do anything." Before she could finish speaking, she saw the young man in front of her push open the door and walk out. The door was closed behind him. Xiao Ju walked forward a few steps. In the snowy night, the wind was especially cold. It blew away some of the suffocating feeling in the room. He slowly walked along the long corridor. There was no moon tonight. Under the flickering lights, the past flashed past his eyes like a lantern. Those seemingly familiar scenes finally stabbed into his heart like a sharp sword. Gradually, a sharp pain spread out. Time and space overlapped. Under the moonlight, a girl in tight clothes pulled a longbow with great effort. She didn't get tired of it. In the wilderness of the Liang province guards, she slowly blurred into a familiar figure. The masked youth clumsily swung the long sword in his hand. He fell to the ground with a bloody nose and a swollen face. He sneered, "There's actually someone who works so hard and can't even withstand a single blow." The girl was covered in the smell of wine. She angrily asked, "Why would you rather like Lei Ho than me? In terms of appearance, in terms of skill, and in terms of our past relationship, I'm very disappointed." In the Xianchang dojo, the young man who stumbled when reciting Great Learning could now recite an entire chapter effortlessly after getting drunk. Yet, he still had to hug his father's waist and ask for his father's praise. She looked down at the recruits training on the training field. She answered his questions fluently. When she was praised, she giggled and boasted, "Sometimes, I even feel like I was a female general in my last life." The highest level a liar could achieve was to hide the truth behind a seemingly unintentional lie when telling the truth. Hua Yuxian asked him with a smile, "Is the girl beside you the little girl from back then?" Was she the little girl from back then? Was she the little girl who was a complete mess of horse archery and swordsmanship, serious, stubborn, hardworking, and unsociable? Was she the one who said, "The person holding the sword in her hand should know where the tip of the sword was pointed"? Was it pointed at the enemy in front of her or the weak behind her? The little girl who said, "I will never draw my sword against the weak." Was she the little girl who was forgotten by her classmates in the field and refused to betray them and tell them the whereabouts of her friends even when she was beaten black and blue? Was she the fierce but inexplicably pitiful young Mistress Sue who tried to kill herself a second time after failing to do so after Yuhua Temple and on Snow Lotus Mountain? At that time, he held an umbrella for her, gave her a candy, and gave her a non-existent moonlight. However, he did not know that she lived such a miserable life. She was so miserable that she could not even have her real name. On moonless nights, she hid behind a mask and spent many years alone and lowly. He saved her once, but he could not save her a second time. At the Water God Festival in Jiang, He Yan's face was hidden under the legendary liar mask that was said to be punished for lying. He told 10 secrets and 10 truths. I was fated to be with the governor in my last life. I was a female general in my last life. So that was it. So that was it. He raised his head. The sky was dark. Tonight, there was no moon as bright as frost. The wind was as clear as water, and the scenery was endless. Tonight was so cold. He had only lied to her once, but she had lied to him for many years. When the lie was exposed, his heart ached. Xiaoju walked very slowly. She walked to the end of the long corridor, in front of the study, and under the pomegranate tree under the flower wall. There seemed to be a girl smiling like a flower, trying to reach out and pick the pomegranate that was still young. Again and again, her back view gradually overlapped with that of a spring day many years ago. He was on the tree, and she was under the tree. The mask covered the little girl's face firmly, only revealing a pair of bright eyes and a comical posture of her trying her best to pounce on the yellow loquat. The white-robed young man landed lightly on the ground. He looked at the thin and short girl in front of him, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. That day, the spring breeze was warm, the sky was blue, and the water was blue. It was just like the first time they met. Someone's voice sounded in the sky, in the wilderness, by the spring water. It carried an indescribable sense of loss, and scattered in the night wind with countless fireflies in the depths of the dense forest. Sometimes, after being someone's substitute for so long, it's hard to avoid forgetting who you are. Governor, you must remember my name. My name is, the young man's beautiful and clear eyes gradually darkened. He lowered his eyes and looked at the sachet that was tightly held in his hand. He softly said 2 words. He Yen. Chapter 2:15. It snowed the entire night. When they woke up the next morning, the courtyard was covered in a layer of silver frost. Qing Mei woke up early to make porridge. Before cooking, she took a look to see if there was anyone in He Yan's room. Seeing that He Yan was putting on his clothes, she asked curiously, "Miss, why are you up so early?" "It's cold, why don't you sleep a little longer?" "It's fine." He Yan stretched, "I'm used to it." In the Liang province guards, he had to wake up early every day. After returning to the capital, it was not easy to change this habit. While Qing Mei was cooking porridge, He Yan picked up the broom in the corner of the courtyard to sweep the snow. "Miss, put it down." "How can you do this?" "This servant can do it," Qing Mei said in a panic. He Yan smiled, "You still want to cook porridge. How can one person do 2 things? Forget it, it's just sweeping the snow. I did much more difficult things than this when I was in the guard station. Don't worry about it." Qing Mei was very insistent, "No, Mississippi. Take the stove and sit in the room. This servant can do it. It's really fine." Chi Wu, who was squatting in the corner, suddenly felt very uncomfortable. Although he was ordered to protect He Yan, the He family was very poor. They only had one servant, Qing Mei. Now that the young miss and the servant girl were fighting to sweep the snow, it was very difficult for a man like him to pretend that he did not see. After hesitating for a moment, Chi Wu stood up and said, "I'll do it." Before He Yan could say anything, Qing Mei's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled and stuffed the broom into Qi Wu's hands. Then I'll have to thank guard Qi Wu. Qi Wu. He suspected that this servant girl was waiting for him here. He Yan was a bit embarrassed. Qi Wu was a talent in the Nine Banners camp. He usually followed Xiao Zhu around, so he probably had never done something like sweeping. If a sword-wielding imperial bodyguard was a servant, it would seem that the He family was bullying him. He Yan said, "Forget it, let me do it." "It's fine." Qing Mei giggled, "Imperial bodyguard Qi Wu is very good and strong." "Miss, your body is not good, so you'll be fine after some rest." Qi Wu thought to himself, this servant girl probably didn't see how our young miss lifted a 100-pound boulder by herself in the Liang province guard. However, since there were two women here, it was better for him to do the work of sweeping the snow. Of the corners. After Qi Wu finished sweeping the snow and Qing Mei finished cooking the porridge, the three of them ate together at the table. He Sui and He Yunsheng had left early. Qing Mei had made pancakes the night before for them to take with them. After eating, He Yan sat in the room in a daze. She wanted to go to the Su family to find Fu Wang, but when she opened the drawer, there was not a single banknote inside. She couldn't help but feel sad. If she had known earlier, she would have borrowed the stack of banknotes from Xiao Zhu when she was in the Xiao family. But now, with her status, she was embarrassed to borrow it. How about she go find Lin Shuanghe? While she was worrying about the banknotes, a gray-feathered pigeon flew into Qi Wu's storage room. It stopped on the beam and looked at him with its beady eyes. Qi Wu opened his hand and the pigeon flew into it. There was a small copper pipe tied to the pigeon's leg. Qi Wu untied the copper pipe and took out a piece of paper from it. After he finished reading the paper, there was a puzzled expression in his eyes. After a while, he sorted out the paper and released the pigeon. He walked to He Yan's room and knocked on the door. He Yan opened the door and saw Qi Wu. He asked, "What's wrong?" The scabbard of young master's autumn drinking sword cracked when he fought the Wutong people in Jiang. Qi Wu said, "The autumn drinking sword was forged by the master swordsmith, Lu Daichuan. The autumn drinking sword is now being forged by Master Lu." He Yan nodded. He didn't understand what Qi Wu's words had to do with her. Young master went out of the city to retrieve the sword today. Young master went out of the city and I also have to go out, so I can't go and retrieve the sword. Master Lu has a rule. He won't wait for people who are late. If he misses this day, he will have to wait for 100 days before he can come out again. Besides the sword owner, only the person closest to him will go to retrieve the sword. Ah! He Yan was speechless. That's a bit too strict. However, all capable craftsmen in the world more or less had their own temperament. Since Lu Daichuan could forge a precious weapon like the autumn drinking sword, it was understandable that he had such a quirk. "Miss He." Qi Wu looked at her and said, "You are now the governor's fiancée. Master Lu will agree to let you retrieve the sword. Therefore, Miss He, can you do young master a favor and retrieve the sword from Master Lu?" He Yan said, "It's not difficult. But how can I prove that I am the governor's fiancé? Don't you have young master's snake-patterned black jade?" Qi Wu answered, "You can use that." He Yan untied the black jade from her waist. "Can this prove your young master's identity?" Qi Wu said, "Yes." "Then if I use this to go to the bank, can I get some money?" Qi Wu said. "Miss He, if you lack money, you can tell me. Young master won't stand by and do nothing." He Yan laughed and said, "I'm just joking." However, she secretly understood that this black jade could be used anywhere. It shouldn't be difficult to exchange it for some money. She simply said, "Okay, it's not a big deal. Give me Master Lu's residence. I'll go there in a moment. Master Lu lives in the mountains north of the city." "It's a bit far away," Qi Wu said. "I will prepare a carriage and bodyguards for Miss He to avoid danger on the way." He Yan said, "Forget it. Your bodyguards can't even beat me. If we really encounter danger, it's hard to say who will save who. Just give me his residence. It's broad daylight, so it won't be a problem. Moreover, after the assassin incident, the number of guards in the city has doubled. It won't be a problem. She was stubborn. Chi Wu couldn't win against her and had to give up in the end. Chi Wu seemed to have something important to do. After writing down Lu Daichuan's residence for He Yan, she hurried out of the mansion. He Yan comforted Qing Mei and led Xiang Xiang out the door. Although Lu Daichuan's residence was far away, it wasn't difficult to find. It was winter in the mountains north of the city. The snow was thicker than the snow in the city. Everywhere was silvery white. If the carriage traveled in the mountains, it would take a day and a night. He Yan was glad that he didn't listen to Chi Wu's advice to take a carriage. Instead, he rode a horse. At least he could catch up with Master Lu before sunset. Lu Daichuan was also a wonderful person. He Yan had thought that since he lived in the mountains, he must be a sage-like master. Who knew that this man had built a palace-like residence in the mountains, which was extremely gorgeous? As soon as He Yan entered, 2 giant tigers ran over and growled at her. Xiang Xiang jumped in fright and almost threw He Yan off. He Yan held onto the reins and comforted Xiang Xiang. When he got off the horse to take a look, he found that the 2 tigers were actually made of wood. Their eyes were black gems with green light, shining brightly in the dark. At first glance, they looked exactly the same as the real thing. He Yan was surprised. This was probably Lu Daichuan's work. He was indeed a skilled craftsman. The door wasn't closed. The 2 giant tigers were still growling at He Yan, but they didn't do anything else. He Yan thought for a while and pushed the door open to enter. As soon as he entered, he felt that this place was like a smaller version of Dawei. In the courtyard of the northern lands, there was a small canal that looked like a river town in Jiangnan. Inside the canal, there was a small boat that could only fit 1 person. There was even a gauze curtain on the boat, and moving music could be heard from it. Upon closer inspection, there was no one in the boat, only a wooden box. The flowers and plants on the wall were fake, but they were lifelike. Even though it was winter, it was lively and bustling. Some colorful stones were scattered on the ground. They shouldn't be gems, but they were shining and attracting people's attention. He Yan felt as if she had entered the legendary Dragon Palace. It was as if she had entered a fairyland. She couldn't help but sigh in admiration. This person was such a skilled craftsman. No wonder he could forge a sword like autumn wine. She had just walked to the main hall when the door opened with a crash. He Yan walked in and saw a man in a white robe sitting in the large hall. This man was cutting a bamboo dragonfly. He was probably at the last step. He Yan watched as he pulled the tail of the dragonfly and the dragonfly flew up on its own with a weng 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 sound. She couldn't help but cry out in surprise. The man turned his head, and He Yan saw his face clearly. In fact, this man was dressed like an immortal. She didn't know what material his white robe was made of. It was especially light and elegant. Just by looking at his appearance, he looked like a hermit from the previous dynasty. However, his appearance was completely different. This person was very round. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he was like a round ball. When he looked over with a smile, he looked like a Maitreya Buddha. He didn't have the air of a high scholar. This was somewhat beyond He Yan's expectation. She thought she would see a cold, arrogant, and eccentric old man with a white beard. She didn't expect to see such a kind fat man. Moreover, this person looked very young, probably in his 20s. It was a young fat man. "We have a guest." The man smiled. "Are you Master Lu?" He Yan took off the jade pendant from her waist and showed it to him. "I'm here to get the sword for military governor Shao." Eh? Lu Daichuan saw He Yan's jade pendant and was stunned. "Why do you have Shao Huijin's sword? Are you Shao Ju's fiancé?" He Yan was caught off guard by the question and didn't know how to answer for a moment. After a while, she nodded. That's right. So you are Huijin's fiancé. Lu Daichuan nodded and looked at He Yan again. Not bad, not bad. He Yan felt inexplicably uncomfortable. She thought for a while and asked, Master Lu seems to have a good personal relationship with military governor Xiao. This person looked amiable. He wasn't as unreasonable as Chi Wu said. It's not good, but it's also not bad. Lu Daichuan shook his head with a smile and clapped his hands. With a creak, He Yan looked in the direction of the sound and found a small wooden figure standing in the hall. It was only 1 foot tall and made into a beautiful woman. It walked into the hall. She didn't know what it was going to do. This is all made by Master Lu. Just some puppets. Lu Daichuan smiled. There are no living people in my villa. There are only puppets who help me work. It sounded a little scary, but He Yan didn't feel scared. She said, why don't you ask some craftsmen to help you? Or just go down the mountain. That won't do. Lu Daichuan said, I have lived on the mountain for more than 30 years. The life below the mountain doesn't suit me. He Yan asked, Master, how old are you this year? This person looked like he was in his 20s. How could he have lived on the mountain for more than 30 years? Guess. He Yan couldn't guess. She simply said, Master, you look like you are in your early 20s. Her words seemed to please Lu Daichuan. He held his stomach and laughed. Child, your mouth is as sweet as honey. No wonder Xiao Huijin likes you. You are so likable. He Yan. Just as she was wondering why this master swordsmith looked so frivolous, the wooden figure that had just entered the room ran out again with a da-da-da sound. He held a long box in his hands and placed it in front of He Yan. He Yan opened the box and saw a long sword lying in it. The blade was as white as snow. It was autumn wine. It's already fixed. He Yan said in surprise. There were no traces of cracks on the scabbard. It's just a sword. It won't take long. Lu Daichuan looked at He Yan and smiled kindly. You are Xiao Huijin's fiancé. For Xiao Huijin's sake, I can also make a weapon or treasure for you. What do you want? He Yan joked, Master, can you also make a sword like autumn wine for me? Lu Daichuan looked at her and smiled. No. Why? He Yan asked with a smile. Master, do you think I don't deserve your sword? You already have a sword. You don't need another one. He Yan's smile suddenly froze. She looked at Lu Daichuan. How did this man know she had a sword? Master, I don't have a sword. He Yan said, I don't even have a good weapon. You will. Lu Daichuan shook his head. The smile in his eyes seemed to see through her. Your sword will come back to you again. He Yan stared at Lu Daichuan, trying to find any flaws on his face. Unfortunately, he could not see anything other than the amiable and consistent smile on this person's face. He Yan hugged the box containing autumn wine and stood up. Grandmaster, it's getting late. I came here today to retrieve the sword. Now that I have the sword, I should go back. She bowed to Lu Daichuan. Thank you, Master. You're welcome. Lu Daichuan also stood up. It was not easy for him to stand up because he was fat. It took him a lot of strength to stand firmly like a ball. He clasped his hands and sent He Yan to the door. Beside him were the 2 colorful tigers and the wooden figure. He looked like a weird king hiding in the mountains. Let's go. He Yan got on his horse and turned around to leave. However, from the view of his back, it seemed as if he was fleeing in panic. The sound of the horse's hooves gradually faded away. Lu Daichuan made a tut sound and looked down at the wooden figure that only reached his calf. Jade, do you think I scared the little girl? The wooden figure hung on his leg and didn't say anything. Forget it. Lu Daichuan shook his head again. He turned around and walked back. As he walked, he said to himself, Huijin, this is all I can do for you. It was getting dark on the mountain. When He Yan came, the sun hadn't set yet. She didn't stay long in Master Lu's Bieyuan. But when she came out, it was already dark. Fortunately, the moonlight was bright tonight. It shone on the snowy mountain, making it brighter than usual. She remembered the way. She rode xiang down the mountain. But she kept thinking about what she had just said to Master Lu. How did Master Lu know that she already had a treasured sword? Did he already know something? Or was this person really some kind of otherworldly expert who could see the truth of her reincarnation in someone else's body? But she was alone now and knew nothing about Lu Daichuan. She had to wait until she met Xiao Ju and asked him who Lu Daichuan was. Then she would make a decision. He Yan sighed in his heart. He had just solved the problem of Lady He, who had disguised herself as a man and joined the Liangzhou guards. Now there was another problem. These days, it seemed like he was solving one problem after another. He Yan's gaze fell on the wooden box in front of him. Fortunately, he had finally retrieved the autumn drinking sword. She didn't know where He Rufei had put her Qinglang. Given He Rufei's cautiousness, he wouldn't show anyone the Qinglang unless he had no other choice. If her Qinglang was still by her side, she would definitely clean it every day. The horse galloped through the mountain. The cold wind that blew against her face cut painfully. She exhaled, and her breath immediately turned into white mist under the night sky. It was extremely cold in the mountain. Suddenly, something flew toward him from behind. The horse under him was startled and stood up abruptly. He Yan pulled on the reins. In the next moment, someone flew from behind him and aimed the tip of a sword at his back. An assassin. He Yan dodged to the side and landed on the ground. Before he could see who the person was, the person had already made a comeback. He threw himself in front of He Yan and pointed the sword at He Yan's heart. He wanted He Yan's life without saying anything. In this desolate mountain range, there wasn't a single person. Even if he shouted, it would be impossible to call the city guards. And she was unarmed, so it was very troublesome. She had no choice but to use her hand to split open the wooden box that she had clamped under her armpit. With a dong sound, the wooden box shattered and the autumn drinking sword fell into He Yan's hand. Although she had seen and touched it in her previous life, this was the first time she had used it. As soon as she touched it, she felt that the sword was really cold. It was as sharp as the owner of the sword. "I'm sorry, Xiao Ju," she secretly said in her heart, "I'll borrow your sword for now." He Yan suddenly pulled out the autumn drinking sword and looked at the person in front of him. He shouted, "Who are you?" Under the moonlight, He Yan was able to clearly see that the other party's entire body was wrapped in a black cloak. The curtained hat covered most of his face, only revealing a little bit of his chin. In the dim light of the night, it seemed as clear as green jade. She wanted to look again, but the other person was already impatiently holding his sword and sweeping it towards He Yan's neck. He actually started to fight without saying anything. He Yan was startled, but the murderous aura in front of her made it clear that the other person wanted to kill her. It seemed that he only wanted to take her life. He Yan frowned. Could it be that He Rufei sent someone again? But last time there was a group of people. Why was there only one this time? But soon, He Yan understood why there was only one person this time. Compared to the assassins last time, this person's skills were much better. Even He Yan couldn't help but be surprised when she fought with him. His sword technique was exquisite. It looked as calm as water, but it was full of murderous aura. It was actually on par with hers. She was surprised. Where did this person come from? Even in Shua capital, there weren't many people with such skills. He Rufei actually had such a powerful person under his command? She didn't have time to think about it. The long swords danced and made a clanging sound. He Yan dodged the person's sword and bent her elbow towards the other person's abdomen. That person seemed to have expected her sneak attack and dodged to the side. Instead, he flashed behind He Yan and stabbed with his sword. He Yan couldn't dodge in time. She could only turn her back to that person and stab back. The two swords collided. With a peng sound, both of them took a few steps back. He Yan was startled for a moment. She didn't know why, but a familiar feeling welled up in her heart. She didn't know where this familiar feeling came from, but before she could figure it out, that person had already stabbed with his sword again. The other person's movements were extremely fast. After each exchange, there wasn't any time to rest as he continued to attack again. The sword moves were like a storm, fine and dense. He Yan's autumn drinking sword was nimble and sharp. She had long been used to it. Thus, she didn't hide the flaws and habits of General Fei Hong. The snowflakes danced in the wind. In the darkness of the night, the bamboo forest seemed to have the sound of wind echoing, leisurely burying the killing intent. He Yan's foot lightly tapped the ground. The autumn drinking sword in her hand seemed to have a telepathic connection with her. She finally caught a glimpse of a flaw in the other person's sword moves. Without hesitation, her figure was as fast as lightning as she stabbed towards the other person. At the same time, that person also stabbed towards He Yan. The two swords made a crisp sound as they collided in the air. The moment they passed each other, a "pa" sound rang out. A cold light broke into two. The sword in the black-clothed person's hand had been cut in two by the autumn drinking sword. He Yan suddenly turned around and stabbed towards the back of that person who hadn't yet turned around. The tip of the sword was just a hair away from piercing his back. But at this tiny hair, it stopped. The surroundings were strangely quiet. There was only the sound of falling snow and the clear cry of wild cranes in the distant valley. He Yan looked at the other person's back and seemed to feel something. The hand holding the sword slightly trembled. The other person didn't move. She slowly opened her mouth with a hoarse voice, "Who are you?" In an instant, the mountain and the moon broke through the dark clouds. Thousands of peaks piled up like jade and thousands of valleys paved with silver. That person slowly turned around and took off his veiled hat, revealing a familiar face. "Xiao Ju," He Yan murmured. The black cloak was slightly blown by the wind in the snowy night. The youth's facial features were unbelievably handsome like a jade carving. There seemed to be an indescribable emotion in his limpid black eyes. His gaze focused on her, as if from the past to the present, and perhaps the future. "Your swordsmanship has improved a lot." He hooked his lips. "Long time no see, General He." End of Book 5. Chapter 216. The moonlight shone on the snowy ground. In the flowing light and shadow, the two of them stood facing each other. There was no need to hide. He Yan's gaze fell on the autumn drinking sword in her hand. At this moment, she realized how heavy the sword was. It was so heavy that she almost couldn't hold it anymore. "When did you find out?" she asked softly. "I found He Wanru's wet nurse," Xiao Ju replied. He Yan suddenly looked up at him. His expression was as calm as ever, as if what he said was just a trivial matter. Thousands of complex emotions surged in her heart. Bitterness, panic, nervousness, and finally, they all turned into a sigh of relief. "I'm sorry," He Yan tried to make herself look more relaxed, "I didn't mean to lie to you." But why did she lie? Even she couldn't come up with an acceptable reason. Xiao Ju bent down to pick up the broken sword on the ground. The sword in his hand had been cut in two by He Yan's autumn drinking sword. He Yan quietly watched his movements. When he bent down and stood up, he said, "You already know everything?" "More or less." Xiao Ju's gaze was calm. "You are Su Zhiheng's deceased wife, and He Rufei who wears a mask." When the words, "deceased wife," came out of his mouth, He Yan's heart shook violently. It was as if the secret that she didn't want to be discovered had been exposed. For no reason, she looked a little embarrassed. She had been brave all her life and never feared facing thousands of troops on the battlefield. Only when she faced this person in front of her did she have the thought of retreating. But she couldn't run away. Since she had been discovered, she had to face it. No matter if it was a past full of conspiracies and schemes, or a future with no path ahead. That's right, He Yan said, I am He Yan, and He Rufei, your classmate. Xiao Ju's eyes moved slightly. After a moment, he asked, how did you become the daughter of the military officer at the city gate? If you've already found Mother Qin, you should already know how I died. He Yan smiled bitterly and looked at the icicles hanging from the trees not far away. The icicles were like teardrops, hanging from the branches. After I died, when I woke up again, I was already He Yan now. Maybe God took pity on me and gave me another chance. He Yan shrugged. Even if I told you about the supernatural, no one would believe me. Maybe someone would even think that I was talking nonsense. However, since you've already found me, I think you already believe this matter. Why did you exchange identities with He Rufei? He Yan was startled. His eyes, which had always been bright, seemed to be covered by a layer of mist at this moment, giving birth to a bit of confusion. Xiao Ju, no one can decide their own fate at birth. It's the same for me. When I could remember, I was already He Rufei. She slowly said, I only knew that my eldest brother wouldn't live for long. If I didn't become He Rufei, the title of nobility of the He family would be taken away. Therefore, I had to live in the name of He Rufei, and live like this for the rest of my life. However, at that time, I was too young and didn't want to succumb to this kind of fate. Therefore, I left the He family and joined the Fuyue army. I earned military merits and received a reward. I also didn't expect that my eldest brother, who was destined to die young, didn't die and was even safe and healthy. Therefore, when I returned to the capital, everything went back to its original place. He became He Rufei and I became He Yan. This was good. There was nothing bad about this. Although she felt a bit wronged at that time, this was already the best ending she could think of. Whether it was He Rufei or He Yan, both of them would be able to escape unscathed. He Yan slightly raised her head, as if she was trying to force back the tears. She smiled and said, He Rufei is the famous General Fei Hong. Second miss, he is just a sickly person with poor health. When she reached the age, she could use He Rufei's name to find a good marriage for herself. Originally, this matter would have ended at this point. It's just that they were afraid that I would reveal some clues and implicate the entire He family, so they didn't trust me. Therefore, after this, they took my life. He Yan laughed self-deprecatingly, this should be a punishment from the heavens for me. Those who rebelled against fate would eventually be wiped out by fate. If she had obediently stayed in the He family as He Rufei back then and didn't go to the battlefield, didn't strive for military achievements, and didn't become General Fei Hong, perhaps when the time came, she and He Rufei would return to their positions and wouldn't have lost their lives. But, if someone asked if she could turn back time and if she had the chance to choose again, would she still leave the He family? He Yan thought that she probably would. It was because she had embarked on a path that was completely different from the predetermined fate that she realized that the vastness of the world, the scenery were completely different from those hidden in the 4 residences. Your eyes, it was the He family who blinded me. He Yan interrupted him, but they probably didn't expect that I could live well without my eyes. This is all thanks to you. She smiled slightly, I will remember what you said to me that day at Yuhua Temple. Even if I become a blind person, I want to be the one who is the most different among the blind people. Xiao Ju's breathing deepened slightly. What he said was also hurting He Yan. If He Yan had become a blind person, after he no longer posed a threat to the He family, he might have been able to save his life. It was because she didn't accept her fate that the He family became uneasy again and took her life away. Xiao Ju, please don't blame yourself. He Yan seemed to have seen through her thoughts, I don't regret my choice at that time. If I didn't meet you, I wouldn't even have the courage to live. As early as the mid-autumn night at Yuhua Temple, there should be no He Yan in this world. Fate was cruel, but it was also mysterious. Every seemingly careless choice would lead to unpredictable results. Now that she had become He Sui's daughter, she was no longer blind. Old friends appeared in front of her one by one. She couldn't tell if she felt more regretful or more fortunate. I am He Yan, and I am also He Rufei. She smiled slightly. When I first woke up, I accidentally stumbled into the recruit camp of the Liang Province Guards. When I told you that I wanted to make a name for myself, I wasn't lying. Because only by standing at the same height as He Rufei can I expose his lies. My life alone is not important, but because of me, He Rufei caused the deaths of many innocent people. This is unforgivable. What he owes me, I will take it back myself. Now that I have become Marquis Wuan, I have the ability to fight against him. What I am going to do next is also these things. I'm sorry, Xiao Ju, I didn't mean to lie to you. It's just that there are some things that are too ridiculous to say. Maybe it's because I'm too timid and don't know how to face you. You've been lying to me, he said. He Yan's fingers curled up slightly, and he took a deep breath. I'm sorry. Are you also lying to me about liking me? He asked. He Yan suddenly raised his head. He stood in the wind, his posture tall and straight, just like in the past. Yet, he also seemed to have returned to the beginning, a distance that could never be touched. No. Xiao Ju looked at him indifferently. I didn't lie to you. He Yan paused, swallowed the sourness in his throat, and then continued, when I was He Rufei in the Xianchang dojo, you took care of me a lot. You helped me apply medicine, and taught me swordsmanship. In this life, when I was He Yan, you always protected me. You always appeared when I was in danger. Xiao Ju, I used to like you, and now, I like you even more. Some things, once said, were said, it was as if all of his worries were gone. He Yan knew very well that Xiao Ju was someone who hated betrayals and lies. This was related to the Xiao family's accident. Thus, when he found out that she was pretending to be a man in the Liang Province Guards, he was also this sensitive. And now, an even bigger secret had been exposed. To Xiao Ju, from the moment they met, it had been a complete lie. She had no right to ask for Xiao Ju's forgiveness. I'm not the real Lady He. She took a deep breath, and revealed a fake relaxed smile. I really didn't want to drag you into this. Originally, I just wanted to make a name for myself in the Liang Province Guards, and be your right-hand man. I didn't think that things would come to this between you and me. His Majesty bestowed a marriage upon the two of us, and I can't go against it, but... She looked at Xiao Ju, you don't have to take this marriage to heart. Just treat it as a partnership. If you find a girl you like in the future, I will tell her that you and I are just putting on a show. When the time comes, you can cancel the marriage or divorce me. It doesn't matter. Xiao Ju's eyes suddenly turned cold, and she slowly asked, divorce you? He Yan pretended to be indifferent and sighed, actually, marriage doesn't mean anything, really. Don't look at how happy Yan Nangguang is and think that there are many benefits to marriage. I've been married before, and if we talk about it, I was happier before I got married. Perhaps I am more suitable to be alone. 2 marriages are not good enough. She joked, wait until you divorce me, and I have settled all the debt of gratitude and enmity. Then 1 man, 1 horse, I will roam the Jianghu. It's better than living the life of an ordinary woman in this courtyard house, not very good. It's just a pity for you. She seemed to be genuinely worried for Xiao Ju. Everything was fine, but I've blocked your marriage for no reason. Xiao Ju coldly said, He Yan. Don't look so angry. He Yan laughed, the one who should be sad is me. It wasn't easy to deceive a marriage, but now it's been exposed. Fortunately, I'm a very broad-minded person, and I'm always open-minded about everything. After today, you and I will be ordinary schoolmates. Xiao Ju, she said seriously, pausing between each word, thank you, no matter if it was in the past or now. Her smile was relaxed, and she looked like she didn't care at all, like a heartless youth in the Liang province guards. However, only He Yen knew that when she said these words, every word was like a knife cutting into her heart. She liked this person so much, and had experienced so much with this person. Xiao Ju had given her warmth and treasures that she had never experienced before. She thought that she had caught the moon, but in reality, she had only caught the reflection of the moon under the water. Now that she had woken up from her dream, she should return to her own path. Greed was a taboo in a relationship. If she didn't have that bit of greed, perhaps she wouldn't have been so sad when they parted. He Yen raised a big smile, thought for a moment, and reached out to Xiao Ju. Here, this is your autumn wine, and now it's returned to its rightful owner. The youth didn't move, and his beautiful eyes focused on her, surging with an emotion that He Yen couldn't understand. In the next moment, he strode forward, and He Yen handed the autumn wine back to him. He didn't take the sword. That hand grabbed He Yen's arm, and with a gentle tug, pulled her into an embrace. He Yen was shocked. Under the seemingly cold black robe, there was an incomparably warm embrace. Just like the most valiant general, he had the softest heart. Xiao Ju, you, He Yen leaned into his embrace, and could hear the other person's clear and powerful heartbeat. It was more intense than any other heartbeat, as if it was a declaration of the youth's unknown feelings. She raised her head, and saw Xiao Ju's chin. He Yan's hand was supporting He Yan's waist, and he pressed her head against his chest, as if he was comforting her, but also as if he was afraid that she would escape from his imprisonment. I'm sorry. What? The youth's voice was restrained, hoarse and deep. I didn't recognize you at first sight. In an instant, He Yan's eyes were wet. For a long time, it was as if she had walked alone in the dark for a long time. No one had discovered her existence, and no one cared about her sadness or joy. No one apologized, and no one cheered. Happiness or sadness, beginning or ending, it was all her story. Until one day, someone discovered her. The only person in the world was her light, the source of all her brilliance. Hey, she wanted to lighten the atmosphere, Xiao Huijin, I can't bear to see you like this. He hugged He Yen even tighter, and whispered in her ear, I missed you twice. This time, I won't miss you again. He Yen was stunned. She broke free from Xiao Ju's embrace, and looked at him in surprise. I'm not Lady He, I'm He Yen. I know. I've lied to you, from your previous life until now. I know. I've already been married. She seemed to find it hard to say. Xiao Ju, even if that's the case, are you still the same as before? She didn't think that people who had been married were inferior. There were so many women in the world who had divorced, and those who had been abandoned were no worse than others. It was just that they were unlucky, or they had no choice but to choose the wrong marriage. It didn't prevent them from obtaining happiness. But it turned out that when people met the person they really liked, even if it was a fairy, they would secretly worry about whether they matched the other party. Happiness made people timid, and timidity made people feel inferior. Moreover, she had received too little love, and even the affirmation was very little. Under the night sky, the youth's eyes were like limpid autumn water, and all the coldness and ridicule had faded away. It was unbelievably warm. Xiao Ju smiled. Why are you so unconfident? Even if you've been married, in my eyes, you're just a girl. He leaned over slightly, looking into her eyes. So what if I'm General Fei Hong? I'm only here for He Yen. Chapter 217. It was unknown when Xiangxiang had sneaked back. She stood under the tree and watched them quietly. He Yen looked at him blankly. Is what you said true? I see that your swordsmanship has improved a lot. Why are you still the same as before? He said lazily. Stupid and short. These words seemed to have pulled He Yen back to the past, and the embarrassment and sorry state he was in earlier had unknowingly dissipated greatly. There seemed to be a surge of warmth in her heart, and all of her uneasiness turned to ashes at this moment. She raised her head, unable to hide her smile. But you are exactly the same as you were back then. Xiaoju coughed and turned her head. He Yan was excited and didn't want to let him go. He grabbed his sleeves and didn't let go. He tilted his head and asked, "My sword skills were taught by you personally. But I was still dressed as a man. Why did you take care of me? Could it be that you already liked me at that time?" These words were really shameless. Xiaoju sneered. "I am not a homosexual. But you look like a homosexual." He Yan suddenly understood. No wonder Yan Nongguang always disliked me at that time. He probably thought that I was some kind of male seductress who tarnished the only genius he saw as a rival. Xiaoju stared at her in disbelief. "You are not sad now." "I was not sad in the first place," He Yan said stubbornly. "You were about to cry just now." He raised his eyebrows. "You can't bear to part with me?" He Yan could not keep her face. She retorted. "How could I cry? You saw wrong. Of course I can't bear to part with you. We were schoolmates after all." "Just the friendship of schoolmates?" He Yan ignored her. She leaned closer to him and said, "Don't change the topic. Tell me first. Why did you teach me swordsmanship at the Xianchang dojo? You are not someone who likes to help others. You must have fallen in love with me at that time. Xiao Huijin, could it be that you are really a homosexual?" Xiaoju's face darkened as she reprimanded, "Nonsense. Then tell me why." He Yan had wanted to ask him this question for a long time. At that time, he and Xiaoju did not have a close relationship, but Xiaoju was willing to teach him swordsmanship on the last night of the Virtuous Prosperity Dojo. It was no wonder that he could not figure it out. Even Xiaoju herself did not understand. Xiaoju smiled. "Do you still remember the winter solstice competition at the Eastern Mountain Hunting Ground in the capital when we first entered the Virtuous Dojo?" He Yan was stunned. "I remember." "What's wrong?" She still remembered that it was at that time when she first saw Shen Muxue in her previous life. When the cold and aloof young Miss Shen and the handsome second young Master Xiao stood together, they looked like a match made in heaven, even from the perspective of this lifetime. He Yan muttered, "At that time, His Majesty personally came to the hunting ground." All the students in the Virtuous Prosperity Dojo had to enter the competition. The students who caught the most prey would be rewarded. The students who did not catch any prey would not be able to eat. Who came up with this idea? The weather was cold and the ground was frozen. It was normal that they did not catch any prey. How could they be so harsh on the students and let them starve? Speaking of this, she was still indignant. There was no other reason than He Yan was the one who did not catch any prey and went hungry. Xiaoju chuckled. "Wasn't that your choice?" "What? You clearly caught a rabbit, but you let it go." She turned her head and looked at He Yan. "Wasn't that your choice?" He Yan was stunned. He stammered, How did you know?" "Because," Xiaoju curved her lips. "That was a rabbit. I let it go." At that time, it was winter in Shuajing. The hunting ground was completely covered in white snow. At that time, the Xiao family was not in trouble. Su Jingfu was not at the stage where he could cover the sky with one hand. Emperor Wen Xian had a sudden impulse and personally came to Dong Mountain to watch the students of the Virtuous Prosperity Dojo compete. Originally, it was just a competition in archery and horse riding. Because of the arrival of the emperor, there were more prizes. In order to make the youths work harder and not lose face for the Virtuous Prosperity Dojo, some genius teacher in the dojo came up with a harsh rule. If they did not catch any prey, they would not be able to eat. He Yan cursed the person who came up with this idea in his heart. She was not very good at martial arts. Her horsemanship and archery were even worse. Being together with these youngsters, he really had no advantage. Without a doubt, once they entered the hunting grounds, Unlike his classmates who were in high spirits, He Yan was simply especially helpless. At that time, Xiao Zhu was, without a doubt, the most eye-catching of all the youths. The horse was wearing a marten coat and looked beautiful. In a flash, there was a long string of prey tied behind the horse. Lin Shuanghe was a weak young master who could not lift or carry anything. He followed Xiao Zhu closely and gained a lot of benefits. It did not matter if there was prey or not. In the end, if he could get one or two from Xiao Zhu's prey, it would be enough to complete his task. The two walked in the forest of the hunting ground. Suddenly, not far away, they saw a gray arrow flying from the side. It accurately hit a piece of Shi. The two paused for a moment. Soon, a short figure ran out from the forest. She ran to the side of the Shi and pulled out the arrow. After looking at it, she simply sat on the ground and sighed. She said to herself, hunting is difficult. It's harder than ascending to the blue sky. Xiao Zhu and Lin Shuanghe, they all recognized that the masked man who was moaning and groaning was young Master He from the bottom of the Virtuous Prosperity Hall. Lin Shuanghe had previously improved together with He Yan. He already felt some sympathy for He Yan. Seeing this scene, he said, "My brother, he is too pitiful." Xiao Zhu looked on coldly from the sidelines, unmoved. In his opinion, this young master of the He clan was often mentally ill most of the time. You see, there is not a single prey on his horse. When he goes back, he won't have anything to eat. He will be hungry. In this cold winter, it's not good to be hungry. Lin Shuanghe was a doctor with the heart of a parent. He said mercifully, "How about we give him a badger so that he won't be empty-handed?" Xiao Zhu sneered, "You go by yourself." Lin Shuanghe really walked in front of Xiao Zhu's horse. He picked the prey tied to the back of the horse. But halfway through, he suddenly realized, no, He Rufei can't do anything. However, he is extremely stubborn. If we give it to him like this, he will most likely not agree. He will even righteously refuse. Just like how he proposed to let He Rufei be the last in the exam so that he could strive to be the second last. This young master was extremely principled. Money would not be able to move him. Lin Shuanghe thought that he had a good eye for people. He Rufei would most likely not accept such a straightforward help. How about this? Lin Shuanghe had an idea. Huaijin, your archery skills are very good. Later, you will shoot a rabbit and let He Rufei pass by. An injured rabbit can't run fast. If He Rufei can't hit it, then he really has a mental problem. What does that have to do with me? Xiao Zhu frowned, I'm not going. Saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. Look at this boy, he is too pitiful. We are all classmates. It's just a matter of convenience. Huaijin. Lin Shuanghe was a person who was especially patient when it came to trivial matters. He also knew that Xiao Zhu was the most impatient person. Sure enough, after nagging for a while, Xiao Zhu was annoyed. He picked up the bow on his horse and shot an arrow in a direction. From the bushes, a gray rabbit suddenly jumped out. The arrow was shot very coincidentally. It did not hit the rabbit and just grazed one of its legs. Thus, the rabbit's movements slowed down. The arrow fell into the bushes and no one noticed. He Yan was leaning on the Shi and sighing. Suddenly, he saw a rabbit jump out of the forest. He was first shocked, then became happy. Without saying anything, he grabbed his bow and followed it. He didn't know what was wrong with this wild rabbit, but its movements were much slower than the ones they encountered before. He Yan guessed that it might be because the winter was too cold, and even the rabbits became less agile. But this was also a good thing. The fast rabbit couldn't be caught, but the slow one couldn't fly away, right? Lin Shuanghe praised Xiao Zhu in a low voice, Huaijin, your help was flawless. This boy must think that he got a good deal. Let's go and take a look. He pulled the unwilling Xiao Zhu and secretly followed behind He Yan. The rabbit ran for a while. It seemed that it did not have enough strength and became slower. He Yen thought for a while and put the bow and arrow on his back. He felt that even if he did not use the bow and arrow, the rabbit would most likely not be able to run on its own. He could catch it with his bare hands. In ancient times, there was a saying that one would wait for a rabbit to pass out. He Yen applauded himself in his heart. He actually still had the time to carefully observe the rabbit. This rabbit was very thin. Perhaps it was hungry because there was no food in the winter. It looked like even if it was fried, it would not have much meat. Lin Shuanghe's imagination ran wild. She did not know if the prey she hunted could be shared with the students. However, if she brought this rabbit back to the He family, it would not even be enough for the whole family. Not long after, the rabbit stopped. It pulled open a bush and revealed a hole. He Yan's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. Before it could go in, he grabbed the rabbit by the ear and lifted it up. He said to himself, "Everyone says that a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. The ancient people did not lie to me." At this moment, something seemed to be moving at the entrance of the cave. He Yan held the rabbit in one hand and curiously pried open the grass with the other. Inside the small cave, there were 3 small furry buns. They looked like 3 yuan shao, and they were huddled together. It was actually 3 baby rabbits. He Yan was stunned. She looked at the gray rabbit in her hand that was constantly kicking and struggling. She suddenly realized that this was a female rabbit. The rabbits in the hole were her cubs. He Yan became silent. Lin Shuanghe was holding the Xiaoju to watch the show from afar. When he saw this, he was pleasantly surprised. He Rufei's luck is not bad. He actually found a rabbit nest. If he turns in this nest of rabbits, I think this time he won't be the last. He will at least be the second last. But, why is he holding the rabbit in a daze? The rabbit under her hand jumped silently. He Yan looked at the 3 sesame yuan shao in the hole. After a while, she sighed and took out a small white bottle. He. What is he doing? Lin Shuanghe was very surprised. The boy called He Rufei was grabbing the rabbit's ear and applying medicine for it. He even tore a piece of cloth from his robe to bandage the rabbit's leg that was grazed by the arrow. She said while bandaging, "Forget it. Who told you to meet me? I am a good person. I can't do something like separating a mother and child. I will let you go." She complained endlessly. "Brats, you must remember that because of you, I have to go hungry today." He Yan's movements were very fast. In just a moment, she finished bandaging the rabbit. She put the gray rabbit in her hand at the hole and let go of her hand. The rabbit was freed and rushed back into the hole with a whoosh. "You didn't even say thank you." He Yan sighed. Public morals are degenerating day by day. Although she said that, she still spread out the too near the hole to avoid being discovered by other animals. Lin Shuanghe was stunned. Is He Rufei's brain okay? Is he here to hunt or to set animals free? Why is he showing mercy at this time? Why is he acting like a girl? Is he sympathizing with the rabbit? He turned to look at Xiaoju. "Huaijin, look." Xiaoju's gaze fell on the boy wearing the mask. He didn't know why, but he suddenly remembered something when he was young. That was before he left the mountain. He learned martial arts from a master on the mountain. The master was very strict. If he failed a mission or did not do well, the punishment was very severe. It was very difficult to endure. When he was on the mountain, there was one time where he tested his archery skills. At that time, Xiaoju caught a deer. This deer was very fat. When it ran away, it was not as agile as other deer. He caught the deer. When he was about to raise his knife, the deer knelt down in front of him. This was a pregnant doe. At that time, he was 12 or 13 years old. He was not as cold and heartless as he was later. When he saw this scene, he couldn't help but feel sympathy. His master stood by the waterfall and looked at him. You can't be soft-hearted. The boy stood in place and looked at the doe with tears in its eyes. He thought for a moment, then knelt down. In front of his master, he removed the rope on the doe and watched it escape into the forest. His master was not angry. He only looked at him and said, "Do you know what you are doing? You shouldn't be soft-hearted. I just want to protect what I want to protect." The boy's robe was as white as snow. He calmly replied. He was punished to break the array in the mountain for 3 months. Xiaoju did not regret it. When he was young, he simply thought that he did not want this doe to die. But now, he saw Hirufei here, carefully bandaging the wound of a wild rabbit. This was not soft-heartedness, nor was it hypocrisy. He suddenly understood what he wanted to protect all those years ago. A heart of compassion for the weak. When a person wants to become strong, it is to protect the people they want to protect. If in order to become strong, you lose your heart, it is no different from putting the cart before the horse. Huijin, I think Hirufei really has a problem with his brain. If he wasn't a man, he could be my sister. Lin Shuanghe was still rambling on. The white-robed boy was stunned for a moment. He lowered his head and pulled the corners of his mouth, smiling to himself. That day, Hirufei really did not catch anything. He was also the only boy in the Xiancheng dojo who did not catch any prey. It was also the second day after that day that Xiaoju got up in the night and walked to the courtyard behind the bamboo forest. He watched the clumsy boy wearing a mask, diligently and painstakingly practicing. From then on, his ill-fated relationship with the last place began. He Yan was stunned. He never thought that he and Xiaoju had such an unknown past. At that time, Xiaoju's arrow was hidden very well. She did not realize that the rabbit with an injured leg was caused by Xiaoju. She only saw that the rabbit was pitiful and felt compassion for it. She did not expect that Xiaoju would be moved by this. You were moved by my kindness. He Yan shuddered. Hearing this, he could not help but feel goosebumps. Xiaoju seemed to be speechless. It's not kindness. It's just that at that time, Xiaoju saw a shadow of her own past in Hirufei. He Yan was happy. So that's how it is. So when you were classmates, you already paid attention to me? Then why did you pretend to be indifferent? Once this person started to be heartless, it was really hard to deal with. Xiaoju changed the topic. It's not early anymore. You haven't returned home yet. Your father and brother must be worried. That's true. He Yan came back to his senses. Seeing that it was already late at night, he guessed that He Sui and He Yunxing should be home by now. They might be looking for him again. Afraid that they would be worried, He Yan said, "Then let's go back first." Xiaoju whistled. Green Ear ran out of the forest and stopped in front of Xiaoju. He Yan also flipped onto Xiang Xiang's back. The two of them trotted down the mountain. He Yan rode on his horse. As he galloped, he gradually came back to his senses. He said, "Xiaoju, you asked Qi Wu to ask me to retrieve the sword just to test me. You've been following me all this time." There was no trace of guilt on this person's face. He replied slowly, "This is unbelievable. Of course, I have to confirm it. You wanted to force me to use the sword. You actually beat around the bush." He Yan thought for a moment. But what's up with that Master Lu Daichuan? When I went to his villa, he seemed to know something. He even said that I already had a sword and couldn't have another one. Did you tell him about this? No. Xiaoju's eyes flickered. Other than you and me, no one else knows about this. Then, even if he knows something, it's not strange. He's my master. He Yan was surprised. Master? I have many masters. He's just one of them. It's not strange that he can see your background. But he's already an outsider. Even if he knows, he won't do anything. You don't have to worry. This isn't a problem of worry. He Yan didn't know what to say. This person is your master. You should have at least told me in advance. Fortunately, I didn't do anything rash. If, Xiao Zhu glanced at her. Seeing her uneasy expression, she laughed. What are you afraid of? Even if you did something, with me around, no one would dare to cause trouble for you. He Yan made a tisk sound. You mean that I can do whatever I want in Shua City now? Do whatever you want. Chapter 218. When He Yan and Xiao Zhu returned to the He residence, He Sui and He Yunsheng were sitting peacefully in the room. He Yan was stunned for a moment. He was a little surprised that they were so calm today. He Sui saw Xiao Zhu and stood up with a smile. When I came back, I heard from Imperial Bodyguard Qi Wu that military governor Xiao took my daughter out. Now that you're back, have you eaten? Do you want to eat together? He Yan said, I've eaten. There's no need. He turned his head to look at Qi Wu who was standing at the side. Qi Wu turned his face away as if nothing had happened. He Yan thought to himself, so this master and servant are colluding. Not only did they deceive me, but they also deceived my old father. Uncle, just call me Huaijin. Xiao Zhu said. He Yunsheng coughed and choked on his own saliva. He Sui glared at He Yunsheng and stuffed a sesame seed cake into his mouth. Eat properly. There are guests at home. Don't spit rice everywhere. It's too rude. He Yan said, it's fine. Father, Yunsheng, you guys eat. I still have something to say to Xiao Zhu. I'll go back to the room first. After saying that, he pulled Xiao Zhu and left. If she stayed here any longer, she would feel uncomfortable looking at Father He. He Sui smiled lovingly and said, go. After the two of them left, He Yunsheng pulled the sentinel cake out of his mouth and said in a muffled voice, Father, is this really okay? What? He Yan brought a man to her room. What would happen if word got out? In the past, when that bastard Fan Cheng was here, He Yan would go out to look at him and you would fly into a rage. Why are you so tolerant now that military governor Xiao is here? He Sui scolded him, how can military governor Xiao be the same as Fan Cheng? They're both men. What's the difference? He Sui looked at He Yunsheng and was also puzzled. Didn't you admire General Feng Yun the most before? Why are you acting so awkward now? He Yunsheng put down his chopsticks on the table and said angrily, General Feng Yun can't go to a woman's room before marriage. Feng Yun, did he go there himself? He Sui slapped his head, are you blind? Your sister was the one who dragged him in there. There was no way to refute this. He Yunsheng's cheeks puffed up for a long time before he gritted his teeth and said, what a disappointing fellow. Lust blinded him. He Yan didn't know that her actions just now had caused an argument between her old father and her silly little brother. She dragged Xiao Zhu into her room, closed the door, and lit the oil lamp with a match. All right, there's no one here now. As soon as Xiao Zhu entered the room, he felt that he had almost gone blind. He Yan's room was very fancy. It was completely different from his usual temperament. Rouge, face powder, perfume sachets and curtains were everywhere. People who didn't know better would think that there was a delicate young lady living in there. But when he looked back, the heroine who jumped on the table and poured tea was really an eyesore. He picked up a bronze mirror engraved with flowers on the table and asked in confusion, do you like this? He Yan glanced at it and said, how can I? These were all left by the original Lady He. She came back to her senses and said, don't think that I like this. It's just that if I tear them all down, it will be very different from the past. It will be suspicious. Anne. She sighed, I already feel bad about taking over a magpie's room. If I change all of these things, I'm afraid that the real Lady He will come after me in the future. Xiao Zhu frowned and said, nonsense. He Yan blinked, don't mind the words of a child. Xiao Zhu looked at her calmly and said, aren't you afraid of me now? I've never been afraid of you. He Yen smiled and said, anyway, you know my secret now. She was like a scoundrel. Besides, when we fought on the mountain just now, I wasn't any worse than you. Your sword was even cut into two by my saber. Although she cheated. Xiao Ju smiled and thought of something else. What about your sword? Xiao Ju asked. What are you going to do about your sword? He Yan's smile froze. Her sword was the Qinglang sword. Rather than saying that Xiao Ju was asking her what to do with her sword, it was more accurate to say that she was asking her what she planned to do with the Su family and the He family. When I got into trouble, it was the Su family and the He family who conspired together. He Rufei is a fake General Feihong. I have to expose this matter. During the battle at Huayuan, he tampered with the Fuyue army and caused the deaths of his trusted subordinates. I have to settle this score with him. He Yan's eyes were cold and sharp. I originally wanted to keep Mother Qin as a witness. There are still remnants of the Huayuan battle. If we search carefully, we might be able to find their whereabouts. Compared to He Rufei, Su Zhiheng's side is easier to deal with. As long as someone can prove that Su Zhiheng plotted to murder young Mistress Su, Su Zhiheng will definitely drag He Rufei down when he is in danger. At that time, we just have to follow the vine to find the melon, and this matter will be solved. He Yan looked at Xiao Ju and asked, what do you think? Since her rebirth, she had been keeping her secret from others. Now that she suddenly had an ally, she suddenly felt relaxed. Even if Xiao Ju didn't do anything, as long as she had someone with her along the way, it would increase her strength. Sowing dissension. He Yan's eyes lit up. Dissension would cause the enemy to suspect each other. Sowing dissension would cause dissension between enemies. Then should we send someone to He Rufei's side, or to Su Zhiheng's side? He Yan pondered. Either side is fine. Xiao Ju said. I don't have that many people to use. I do. Xiao Ju glanced at her, I'll help you. He Yan's lips curled up again. Suddenly, she thought of something and complained, but why didn't you tell me that you sent someone to investigate Mother Qin? It wasn't easy for me to bribe the Su family's servant, Fu Wang, and spend a lot of money on him. If I had known that you had already found out, I wouldn't have wasted my money. Now all the money is gone. He Yan, Xiao Ju interrupted her, do you have no money? Ahem, He Yan put her fist to her lips and coughed, it's not that I don't have any money at all. The next moment, there was a stack of banknotes on the table. He Yan's eyes widened. She swallowed and looked away with difficulty, I don't deserve it. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows, you really don't want it. He Yan quickly grabbed it and stuffed it into her clothes, take it as a loan. I have a salary now. I'll return it to you when I get my salary. No need, Xiao Ju said, you can keep it for yourself. If you don't have enough, you can come to me. He Yan had lived for 2 lifetimes, but this was the first time she had experienced the feeling of squandering money like water. Although she didn't lack money in her previous life, when she was in the He family, she didn't experience the feeling of being a hedonistic son. Later on, when she performed a meritorious service, the emperor rewarded her with a lot of rewards. But today in the military camp, she borrowed a little from one of her brothers, and that friend's family had difficulties. In the end, there wasn't much left, and she gave it all to the He family. After she entered the Su family, she had to be a virtuous wife, but she couldn't be extravagant. Moreover, she was blind not long after, and the power of the family was in He Wanru's hands. She didn't even have a shadow of money. Now that she finally had a taste, it was not bad. Xiao Ju, you're really a good person, He Yan flattered, you're more kind than the Buddha of Yuhua Temple. Xiao Ju sneered, you think that whoever gives you money is a good person. That's not it. He Yan said, but, other people ask me for things. There are very few people who are willing to give me things. She supported her chin with her hand and looked at Xiao Ju, you don't seem to have asked me for anything. In her previous life, she had always been giving, whether actively or passively, emotionally, or financially. Only this person in front of her had always silently given and never asked for anything. Xiaoju lowered her eyes and looked at her. After a while, she suddenly said, "You feel wronged, don't you?" He Yan straightened up. "What? You suffered a lot and gave the glory that you fought for to others. You're willing to return to the time when you had nothing. Don't you feel wronged?" He asked. He Yan was stunned for a moment. After a long silence, she said, "In the past, I would feel that way, but now I don't." She smiled. "I have old man He, Yunsheng, Qing Mei, Xiaomai, Shi Tu, Wang Ba and the others, and you. It's much better than the previous life." "Really, Xiaoju," she said seriously, "I don't feel wronged." Xiaoju stared at her for a moment. After a while, she turned her head and said, "Idiot." He Yan didn't think much of it. "Then you're still being fooled by the idiot. When we were in the Liang province guards, I knew who you were from the beginning. Second young master Xiao, military governor Xiao, secretly taught me swordsmanship when we were classmates. Who would believe that you did a good deed without leaving your name? Everyone will think that second young master Xiao has ulterior motives for me. And the mole on your waist, TSK TSK. Xiaoju's face stiffened. "Are you rebelling?" he asked. "It's the truth." He Yan spread her hands. Xiaoju stood up and was about to leave. "Oh, are you angry?" He Yan hurriedly pulled on his sleeve and apologized. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have made fun of you. Military Governor Xiao, don't be angry. I apologize to you. What do I have to do for you to forgive me?" Xiaoju's footsteps paused and he suddenly turned around. He Yan was sitting in front of the table and was startled by Xiaoju's sudden turn. The two of them were extremely far apart. Xiaoju bent over to He Yan and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Is that so?" He Yan stared at him blankly and nodded subconsciously. He leaned closer and smiled slightly. "Okay. What? Let's get married as soon as possible." He Yan was stunned. The young man's handsome face was right in front of him. His eyes were so deep that it seemed to suck him in. "He Rufei has begun to suspect your identity. It's too dangerous for you to be alone. I want to protect you." Almost 15 minutes after Xiaoju left, He Yan was still sitting in front of the table, thinking about what he said before he left. He Yunsheng frowned as soon as he came in. He asked, "He Yan, did you pick up money or treasure? Why are you smiling so creepily?" He Yan turned around and rubbed his face. He asked doubtfully, "Did I smile?" He Yunsheng sighed and sat down in front of the table. "No wonder Dad looks at General Fengyun like a fat sheep. With your qualifications, he must have a problem with his eyes or his brain to take a fancy to you." He Yan picked up a leaf and threw it at him. "How can you talk about your elder sister like that? Do you look like an elder sister?" He Yunsheng looked at him with disdain. "You even pulled him into your room. Dad and I are also men. Cough, why don't you pay more attention? Why are you even more old-fashioned than Dad?" He Yan was puzzled. "You're so young, yet you're like an old man. I pulled him in because we have something important to discuss." "What are you thinking?" He Yunsheng said impatiently, "I don't care about you. I came here to discuss the dowry with you." He Yan, "What?" The youth's face was filled with genuine distress. "Now that the emperor has bestowed the marriage, I have no choice but to get married. Xiao family is rich. Our family can barely support ourselves. I'm still in school, so I can't work to earn money like before. Although you're an official, you've been fined a year's salary. Now, only Dad is receiving wages to earn money. Originally, Dad and I saved the money you gave me for your future. Who knew that you'd find such a family? That money might not be enough, so, what I mean is..." "What do you mean?" "Postpone the wedding date. When I start earning money in the future and earn enough for your dowry, you can marry into Xiao family. He Yan, her silly younger brother, was really a genius. He could even come up with this kind of idea. Fortunately, Xiao Ju was not here. If she heard it, He Yunsheng would tear down her words right after she said that they should get married as soon as possible. Isn't it just money? He Yan said, at most, I'll go to Lutong village again. You dare. He Yunsheng said angrily, it's fine in the past. Now, you're a famous person. How can you still fool around like you did in the past? If military governor Xiao finds out about this, what will he think of you? He Yan thought. Xiao Ju had already seen the picture with her. What else would he think of her? He'll think of her however he wants. Children don't know much and make a fuss about nothing. However, she also knew that this was how the youth was, so she said, fine, I won't go. Isn't it about money? She took out a stack of banknotes. This was the banknotes that Xiao Ju had given her just now. I have a lot of banknotes here. He Yunsheng was stunned for a moment. Where did you get the banknotes? I borrowed them from Xiao Ju, He Yan said righteously. If it's not enough, I'll ask him for more. Are you crazy? He Yunsheng reprimanded. You borrowed his money to prepare your own dowry? Do you think this is reasonable? It's not reasonable, but you don't have to be so surprised. He Yan looked at him with a smile. Actually, the dowry is not a big deal. You have to know that in this world, anything that can be solved with money is not a big deal. In reality, Xiao Ju did not care about the secret that she had died once. Or that she was General Fei Hong. Either of these was more shocking than the dowry. But since Xiao Ju did not care about it, then there was really no need to worry about the money. I know that you are experienced and knowledgeable, He Yunsheng patiently comforted her, but when other women get married in Shuajing City, if they don't have a dowry, they will be looked down upon and gossiped by their husbands. But when other women get married in Shuajing City, they have to rely on their husbands to support them. He Yan said, I have a salary. You are being punished now. I have a salary. Our family background is not high. I have a salary. He Yunsheng was refuted by He Yan and finally said, fine, you have a salary. In the end, you don't want to postpone the wedding date, right? You like General Feng Yun that much. Didn't you say it yourself? He Yan tilted her head and looked at him. If you were a woman, you would only love him. He Yunsheng choked and coughed. He swung his sleeves and stood up. Forget it. I think you are already so smitten that you won't listen to anything I say. Forget it, I will think of a way with father about the dowry. You take care of yourself. He Yunsheng left. He Yan sighed in relief. She lay on her back on the couch as she recalled Xiao Ju's words. Marriage. In her previous life, she was full of hope and expectation when she married another person, but the ending was frustrating. But this time, when she heard it from Xiao Ju's mouth, she did not feel too much resistance or disgust. It was as if it was her, she would still have hope. However, it was not only that. Xiao Ju was right. The current situation in Shuajing City was not stable. She had to deal with the He family and the Su family. With her current identity as Marquis Wuan, there were many restrictions. On Xiao Ju's side, Su Jingfu and the Crown Prince were also eyeing covetously. Yuto would enter the capital in a few days. The battle between the Crown Prince and the Fourth Prince had not yet ended. A storm was brewing in Dawei. No one knew what the outcome would be. Just as Xiao Ju said, she also wanted to protect him. Xiao Ju returned to the mansion. He came back late. Xiao Jing and Bai Rongwei had already gone to bed. These years, he did not spend much time in Shuajing City. Even when he came back every year, he would leave early and return late. His brother and sister-in-law were already used to it. But the kitchen would always prepare hot food for him so that he would not have nothing to eat at night. The snow in the courtyard had been swept clean. He walked into the room, put drinking autumn on the table, and took off his outer robe. Fei Nu followed him in. Go to the Su family tomorrow, Xiao Zhu said. Fei Nu was stunned. Young master, the Su family is not being watched by Wanning. I'm not asking you to investigate, Xiao Zhu said. Go find the Su family's gatekeeper, Fu Wang. Give him a sum of money and make a deal with him. Fei Nu was stunned and nodded. Xiao Zhu whispered a few more words to him. Fei Nu's face showed a bit of surprise. Although he did not understand why Xiao Zhu wanted him to do this, he did not say anything and left the room. He sighed softly and his gaze fell on the drinking autumn sword hanging on the wall. He Yan's identity meant that he could only be cautious in his revenge and could not do it to his heart's content. But even if the He family and the Su family were allowed to live in this world for one more day, it would still make him unhappy. He Yan could do some things that were inconvenient for him to do. There were some underhanded methods that He Yan didn't want to use, but he didn't care. Xiao Zhu stood up and walked in front of the drinking autumn sword. He reached out and touched the scabbard. The scabbard was as cold as snow. The youth looked down thoughtfully. The most precious things for a warrior on the battlefield were the war horse under him and the treasured sword in his hand. If he lost his treasured sword, it would be like a beast losing its teeth and fangs. This fool's past life was actually a process of constant loss. Even now, he wanted to take back everything that belonged to her. Even more, you're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.